So that's all I need to do.
Yep. So I'm going to go here.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Okay, it mightn't be the sharpest of qualities.
One, two, one, two, one, two.
Good morning, everybody. You're very, very welcome indeed to the Guildhall here in Derry. I'm absolutely delighted to be with you and to welcome you to a fascinating conference here today. Fabricating the Future, FabLabs and Digital Social Innovation. And to be honest, if the title is a little confusing at this stage, then please do not worry. I'm a little bit in the dark as well. But I have to say I'm very excited to hear our amazing speakers today. They're from across the globe, you could say, from Detroit, Iceland, London. We're all represented here, so very excited indeed to hear from our speakers throughout the morning and afternoon. I'm delighted to be with you this morning. I work in a television, which is, as you would know and understand, a very technical area. I'm in front of the camera, so I tend to leave the technical stuff to the people behind the camera, but I'm very keen to learn, so I'm hoping to pick up a few tips from our speakers today. Just a bit of housekeeping. As this is all about technology, this digital event, please do use the FabLab NI hashtag and tweet about your experience today. And there's also a bit of competition. Who's noticed the jigsaw puzzle type thing in the middle of your table so far? Basically what we want you to do is to get active, get communicating and making, and then share it with the hashtags. So it's FabLab NI. If you can, you've got your little, how do we describe it? It's like Blockbusters. Does anybody watch Blockbusters ever? Bob Holness? Wasn't it Bob Holness? Yeah. It's that shape, basically. If you can do your jigsaws for me and tweet and share about your experiences here today, that would be absolutely brilliant. Also, because we want you to communicate, please do keep your phones on and keep them on silent if possible. Also, make yourselves aware of the emergency exits just in case we need to leave rather swiftly, but I'm sure everything will be just fine. As I mentioned, we have a great lineup of speakers with lots and lots to talk about. But first and foremost, I would like you to all give a huge welcome to Brenda Stevenson, the Mayor of Derry, to the stage to welcome us to her city. Brenda Stevenson, everybody.
Thank you, Claire, for them kind words and warm words of welcome. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, visitors from Detroit, Iceland, England, and indeed from Belfast. It's fantastic to see such an international gathering here today in Derry, and it's my pleasure and a great honour to host you all here in our fantastic Guildhall. For anybody who's here in the city for the first time, I want to extend a very warm, legendary welcome to you, and I hope you enjoy your time here. The city is on a real high at the minute. We are doing the great and the good, and today is all part of that, so relax and enjoy it. I'm especially pleased to be hosting an event that is really a celebration of both innovation and social action, two of the defining characteristics of this beautiful city. We've been very fortunate here in Derry and also in Belfast to have housed Ireland's first FabLabs over the last 2.5 years, and even more fortunate that these labs have been in the hands of our own Nerve Centre here in Derry and the Ashton Centre in Belfast, both organisations that have grown out of their communities with an ethos of self-help and community dynamism for community benefit, and that's something we're well known for in this city. I have watched closely over this time as FabLabs have established themselves as forces for innovation, working with MIT at the top level, bringing senior people from MIT to Derry and Belfast on numerous occasions, but always ensuring that this knowledge is applied on the ground and is accessible to all. Our FabLabs work hard to bring cutting-edge technology to ordinary people, to bring it out of the universities and put it into the hands of teachers, students, the unemployed, business, the young, the elderly, and all members of our communities, to inspire them to think, to design, and to make. This is where innovation happens, when people are presented with new digital tools that are accessible, engaging, and empower them to actually make things and solve practical problems that they may face in their everyday lives. Our FabLabs have given real meaning and real practical application to terms and technologies like 3D printing, laser cutting, coding, and digital fabrication for thousands of people here from all walks of life in recent years. Through our FabLabs, Northern Ireland has developed internationally innovative approaches to peace building, education, and community development. We should be proud of their work, and I am delighted that you are here today to celebrate that and to take further inspiration from the work of others around here. At its heart, FabLab is an international project with over 400 FabLabs networked around the world, and it is only fitting that we are joined by friends from Detroit and Iceland who sit with us at the leading edge of using this technology and this network for social good. Once again, I want to give you the very warmest legendary welcome, wish you all the best for today, and hope you have a really enjoyable time. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your warm welcome to your beautiful city and continued success in your year in office. Good luck for the rest of the year. Thank you. Now, to get us into the meat of today, we're going to hear from Liam Neelis, who is the chair of the FabLab NI steering group, and he's going to tell us something of the work done by the labs here. Please put your hands together for Liam Neelis, everybody.
Thank you, Claire. First of all, delighted to be here. And I'd like to welcome all of you here today on behalf of the FabLab Northern Ireland Steering Group. Our group brings together a mix of strategic leadership, business, technology, education, and civic and community leadership, indicating the way FabLab cuts across the traditional boundaries and invites unique collaboration between people of different disciplines. We recognise that the technology of FabLab spaces are beginning to make a great deal of impact beyond their size and scope. So much so that corporate business, Google, Nike, Airbus, city councils like Barcelona, and governments, even the White House has just hosted its first Maker Fair. They're beginning to take notice of the wider implications of these innovations and disruptive spaces are. The potential of this project has excited myself and my colleagues on the steering group, and anybody who was here today or this morning for the chamber breakfast will have heard Patrick Hurst, who is the leading exponent of digital fabrication in mainstream business in Ireland. He gave a masterclass of a presentation this morning, and he is actually one of the members of our steering group, and we are in very good company there. It's been a pleasure to watch the project increase its reach and impact way beyond what any of us had imagined just a couple of years ago. Each month, hundreds of children, young people and adults are benefiting from open access to expertise, getting access to teachers and evolving technology not found in an environment like this elsewhere. We had anticipated to reach 3,000 people by February 2015. But the throughput this target was reached and exceeded by the end of 2013, which shows us that Northern Ireland is following the global trend, where the appetite for access to tools, knowledge, and ideas unleashed by this new technology is growing apace. Demand for FabLab mirrors the unbelievable growth in digital fabrication across every continent in the world, and that's clear to be seen, and we're very lucky here today to have some people from across the globe, from Detroit, as has been said, and from Iceland, from London, from Manchester, and from all across the island of Ireland. And we're honoured to have you all here. Highlights of the project so far have been many. Some of the ones we feel most proud of include developing and delivering a brand new OCN accreditation in digital fabrication, the first of its kind in Northern Ireland and beyond. Over 140 16 to 25-year-olds have already received this accreditation, many of the beneficiaries having found themselves not in education, training or employment and are now in meaningful occupation or training. Forming a partnership with DECAL to extend FabLabs work in and with schools and communities to increase access to those who are socially excluded. It can be said that FabLabs may well sit alongside libraries as the new resource for a 21st century community, where knowledge and digital tools encourage us to all make together. Contributing to the FabLab network now of over 400 labs worldwide, FabLab Northern Ireland has been presenting its methodology of socially engaging work with those too often marginalised in society. And it's showing how FabLab is devising impactful, creative educational approaches, particularly with STEM and STEAM. What does the future hold for FabLab Northern Ireland? Well, you'll hear today about the revolution in digital fabrication that's taking place. Firstly, I am pleased to announce the establishment of Fab Foundation Ireland, which is a new all-island body which seeks to promote and grow FabLabs, encourage business involvement and build innovative communities right across the island of Ireland from the ground up. And many of the people involved in that from all parts, from Cork to Limerick and various others through the north and south, have an opportunity to come together to talk about the incorporation of Fab Foundation Ireland and how you can get involved in a session later in the afternoon. One of to secure at least one corporate partner ready to expand or cement the impact currently being made throughout Northern Ireland, and we are already talking to some of the leading corporates in Northern Ireland at the moment. We envisage that FabLab will become leaders in innovative, creative education practices, using design and making technologies right across Ireland, the UK, Europe and beyond, and help build inspirational examples of community-owned digital fabrication spaces. We seek to help people be ready to contribute to the knowledge economy and foster creative collaborative approaches to working with other organisations. We wish to work with and focus particularly on young people who are most marginalised in our society, building their confidence, their skills and their abilities, and helping them realise that they have opportunities, and with FabLab, the tools to begin to forge the future with this new digital revolution. Finally, I'd like to thank a number of people. First of all, the speakers who have come from across the globe, and I met some of them last night, and they really are truly inspirational people. I'd like to thank especially the EU Programmes Body for their vision in supporting such a groundbreaking project for Northern Ireland. And particular thanks and recognition must go to my friend Pat Colgan, the CEO of the Special EU Programmes Body, who's here with us tonight. And it's already public knowledge that Pat will be stepping down from that post, which he's held with great intelligence and creativity for quite a number of years now, and he's standing down at the end of January, so this could be one of his last public appearances here today. And Pat has been a champion of this idea for probably since 2010, and actually brought the FabLab concept to the Nerve Centre and the Ashton Centre, so a big thanks to Pat. We'd like to also thank DECAL for their productive approach to committing valuable funding that allows FabLab to visit more schools, more colleges, libraries and museums, allowing everyone to participate. We commend the work of the steering group members, the Ashton Community Trust and the Nerve Centre for their hard work in establishing the projects to date. And we welcome support from the Centre for Bits and Atoms at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. We've encouraged FabLab to pursue the idea of Fab Foundation Ireland and support our work within the heart of our communities. Thank all FabLab users for their ideas, inspiration and commitment to what we're trying to achieve. Finally, I would like to thank all of you here today for your support, and I hope the event will be another big step in promoting the FabLab message across the island of Ireland. Hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to Liam there, and great news about the future of FabLab here. You mentioned your friend there, Pat Colgan. We're going to be hearing from him shortly. He also mentioned MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Alongside MIT, the other critical partner in bringing FabLab to Northern Ireland, as Liam mentioned, has been the Special European Union Programmes Body, and we're delighted to welcome Pat Colgan, who is their Chief Executive, to Derry today to share his reflections on the project with us. As we hear, he's standing down possibly later this year, and we're glad we caught you, Pat. Please welcome Pat Colgan, everybody.
Thank you very much, Claire. It quite genuinely is a real pleasure for me to be here today for a whole load of reasons, really. I suppose, firstly, the last time I stood on this stage was on a beautiful summer's day, about 3 years ago now at this stage. There was about 150,000 people in the city. The place was a buzz, and we were opening up the bridge across the way, the Peace Bridge. Since then, we've had the City of Culture, we've had Legendary, we're into the City of Music, we're getting ready for the City of Science. This place is a buzz, it really is, and it's extraordinary to see what's been happening here over the last number of years. And it's wonderful to be able to say that we, as an organisation, Special EU Programmes Body, and in particular our peace programmes and our Interreg programmes, are an integral part of all of that. I see evidence of these programmes all around the city and all around the region, and I think it's good to have an opportunity here today just to pay tribute to those programmes and the impact and contribution that they've been able to make to the region. For those of you from abroad, we have an extraordinary thing here in this part of the world called the Peace Programmes. It's an initiative that was started up back in 1995 when the region began to emerge from conflict and began to look towards, hopefully, a more peaceful future. An initiative of the European Commission with the British government and the Irish government, subsequently the Northern Ireland Executive. And since then, there's been approximately €2 billion of funding spent in the region. Money used to transform it, money used to take advantage of the opportunities arising from the peace, and money used to help rebuild our communities, rebuild our society, and move us towards a future that's shared. Everybody who lives here knows that we've made an awful lot of progress. There has been a lot of transformation, but equally, everybody who lives here knows that there's an awful lot still left to be done, that it is a process that takes a long time. Those programs have resulted in well over 20,000 different projects being funded across the region over the period of time. 20,000 projects, each one of them with their own stories. Some projects stand out, have to say. Peace Bridge has to be one of those. And I find personally the FabLab is another one that really captures the imagination of what's going on here. Liam was very kind in his remarks. I remember it was back in March of 2010. I met Neil Gershenfeld for the first time. He had been down speaking at an Oireachtas committee in the Irish Parliament on MIT's work and opportunities for innovation. And we met just briefly for a chat, and he told me about FabLabs. And I was thinking, oh my God, what is a FabLab? He started explaining the concept, what it might do, what it could do. Immediately, I was thinking, yeah, opportunities for research, opportunities for business, opportunities for innovation, opportunities for prototype development, SMEs, and all of that's true. But as we got talking, he started talking about the potential that it might have also for peace building. And it was then that the seed or the idea of locating it within the peace programs began to develop. Conversations then with people in Ashton Centre, Jim Deary at the time, Paul Roberts obviously after that, and John Pito and his colleagues up in the Nerve Centre began to put a little bit more flesh on it. And I think we ended up with something that's really quite different, quite unique in this part of the world, a Fab Lab located inside the community, responsible for giving to the people, if you like, the means of production. That sounds almost subversive. It sounds almost Marxist. But what you're doing is you're empowering communities. It's almost anarchic, but anarchic in an extraordinarily subversive way, by pushing out the boundaries of the envelope and making us think about new ways of doing things, new paradigms, new ways of empowering communities, and new ways of building bridges between communities. But of course, Fab Labs, when you look at them, they're really just technology. The thing that really matters are the people in these Fab Labs. It's really about those people who develop a vision and a passion for what they're doing, and who know how to reach out beyond the walls of the Fab Lab and get people in. That's where the exciting things happen. And we're really blessed in this part of the world with some extraordinary visionary and very, very enthusiastic and dedicated people in our Fab Labs in Belfast and here in Derry in the Nerve Centre. And I'd like personally to pay tribute to the work that they've done over the years. It has not been easy. They've persisted. They've met our very demanding standards of bureaucracy and administrative control, which anybody who's dealt with our programs knows what I'm talking about. That requires patience, that requires persistence, that requires being organized, that requires sticking with it. But the benefits are there to see. And I have to say, I'm particularly proud of what you have achieved, and I'm very proud to say that we have had a small part in making that happen. So I'm grateful to the European Union for the opportunities that their programs have given us to be able to do this kind of work in this part of the world. I think it's fair to say, given the economic climate we're just emerging from, that this funding probably wouldn't have been available otherwise. But it's there now, and I see a lot of different groups, regions from around the whole island of Ireland queuing up to say, can we have a bit of that? And creative approaches to funding are being looked at. I think it's wonderful to see this room full here this morning. If you like, the germination of a seed that certainly from our point of view started back in March. See you all here, and I hope you have a really stimulating day. Those of you who don't know Fab Labs, get to know them. They're really exciting, very interesting, extraordinary potential that they have. And finally, just to say, I'm really delighted that we have from Detroit and from Iceland examples of our colleagues. The great thing about the Fab Lab thing is it's an international community. There's an extraordinary sort of network of people right across the globe involved in these kind of activities, and they're connected via broadband connectivity, and they share resources, and they work, if you like, as part of a community. And these people here today are representative of that. Delighted also that we have representatives from NEFSTA in London, and I think all of that will add to the richness of what we have to share here with you today. So, thanks again for having me. Enjoyed the day. The rumors of my demise are greatly exaggerated. I'll be still around until the end of January, and I look forward to seeing many of you again before then. Thank you, folks. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, Pat, and we're glad you're sticking around. Thank you. Now, the other key funding partner in the project has been the Department of Culture, Arts and Leisure, who have supported wider work in schools and communities here to increase the scope of the Fab Labs in developing social inclusion and tackling disadvantage. Joanna McConway leads the Decal Northwest office, and she is here to tell us more. Joanna McConway, everybody.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen, Lady Mayor. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Yes, I'm Joanna McConway. I'm the Northwest rep for the Department of Culture. I'm here on behalf of our Minister, Carol McKillen, who unfortunately couldn't be here this morning, but is a huge supporter of the Northwest and a huge supporter of our creative learning centres. I think I have to say, first of all, I think one of the city's greatest strengths is the way that it really seamlessly joins its cultural and built heritage with the cutting-edge digital technology reputation that it's rapidly building. And I think just to be here in the Guildhall with historic technology and modern technology at one end of the room and the other is fantastic. And I'm sure you're probably all desperate for these civil servants to finish speaking so you can get a go with all of the technology at the back. But it's just important to say that FabLab is one of the most exciting and innovative digital projects that have been happening here in the past few years. And the department's really pleased to be able to join with SEUPB and the Peace 3 programme to be able to invest in it. That investment ensures that the project reaches communities and schools and youth groups and make sure that they're all able to benefit, and that's something that's very important to our department and our minister, that it's reaching out into the community and giving people opportunities that they might not otherwise be able to take part in. And the work of the Nerve Centre here in Derry and also through the Ashton Centre in Belfast and creative learning centres in our libraries, it's delivering state-of-the-art technology, it's infusing creativity into the community, and it's helping build inclusivity and engagement right across a range of programs. So again, that partnership working is something that's very important that we build on. We're going to hear a bit more about it today from some people who will be giving much more inspirational speeches from Detroit and Iceland. But I think that from our point of view from the department, FabLab is just such a powerful tool in terms of developing social capital and just making sure that this northwest of Ireland is really seen as being a creative driver. So we at the department think that the work that's happening in terms of the Creative Learning Centre and FabLab is very central to the legacy of City of Culture from last year. We're very pleased to be able to support outreach and engagement programs as part of our commitment to continuing the legacy of City of Culture. And in 2013, our Minister made a commitment that she would continue the momentum and the success of last year, and that she would have a wider focus on the Northwest in terms of how DCAL can best serve Derry, Strabane, Coleraine, Limavady. And to that end, I'm very, very pleased to announce today, exclusively for you guys here on Monday morning, that we are going to make a further additional investment in the Creative Learning Centre here in Derry of over £250,000 to extend the existing FabLab here in the city, and that we're going to invest a further almost £100,000 in the mobile FabLab facility so that it can roll out beyond Derry and really reach into the rural heartland across the Northwest. So that's something very exciting, and I'm sure John Peter will say something a little bit more about that. John will tell us how he's going to spend that money. Probably involve a holiday somewhere. But yeah, we're very much committed to building the whole of the Northwest as a creative driver, as I say. The success is saying we need to get there. This is where the ideas are happening. This is where young people are really doing exciting stuff. We need to go there. We need to be talking to the people there and understanding what's happening and taking that learning elsewhere. That is exactly what we need to build on. So pleased to be here today. It's always going to be a City of Culture for us. I just want to congratulate the Nerve Centre again and the Ashton Centre for all the work in getting us here today. So enjoy the day. Hope you have a productive and interesting day. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Joanna, and thank you too for that lovely news about the funding. Delighted, I'm sure John is absolutely delighted. Where is he? Big smile on his face, marvellous. Thank you, Joanna. Now, our other speakers today, this really does sound like an incredible project. One of the most exciting parts of it is the international network. As Pat said earlier, there are FabLabs all over the world doing all sorts of work all over the world. But within the network, there are some labs that stand out alongside the Northern Irish ones for their work at the social and community level. Insight Focus in Detroit is one such lab. And here to tell us about its work is its founder, Blair Evans. A huge welcome all the way from Detroit. Blair Evans.
Doing a small technology switch over here, so give us just a moment. All right, success. I appreciate the invitation to come over from Detroit, and I have a fair amount I want to cover in a reasonably short period of time. So I utilize a trick I pick up in South Africa and just say all protocols observed in terms of the traditional thank yous and the like involved in the process. But I really appreciate the opportunity to come and collaborate with another setting based FabLab. Many of them are institutional based, but we're one of the ones that's also community based. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and talk about opportunities to change the way we engage in social contracts in traditionally underserved communities based on what FabLabs offer. And I realize some people have not figured out exactly what a FabLab is yet, but you can backfill that during the course of the day as we go through. So social innovation, I'm going to look at it from the perspective of community production and having people in the community engage in genuine production in ways that are embedded within the local community as a way to catalyze change. And Fab Labs are great, and advanced manufacturing is great to revolutionize and have paradigm shifts, if you will, in the way that we produce products. And I think there was discussion earlier today about that in terms of fabricating industrial products. I'm going to focus more on the ability to change the way people in the community have an opportunity to participate in the economy and participate in their community at large. And so I'm going to give you a brief idea of what tools we use in the process, then talk about what the paradigm shift is that we're engaged in, and then talk about some of the projects that are trying to allow people to experience and feel this in the community. So the basic mechanics of community production, from our perspective, it includes digital fabrication, which is a fab lab. It's really expertise in the built environment, engineered systems, buildings, devices, vehicles, etc. Equally important for us is expertise in the natural environment. Regenerative, sustainable ways of using nature to produce the materials that we need to fabricate, but also the things that we obviously need to live. Clean air, clean water, healthy food, effective energy stocks, etc. Also ways that people can work together to take skills that you gain in either one of those arenas and actually encapsulate it in some way that can continue to add value on an ongoing basis. Project management techniques, business startup techniques in the Agile and lean project areas, and then appropriate technology is just kind of a sensibility of doing just what you need to do to solve a problem and not using technology for the sake of technology in the process of doing things. So our equipment base, just as a very quick run through, includes a wide range of equipment. We have a couple things that are slightly larger than some of the other fab labs because we're further along in the community-based project building kind of phases of things. But we have a ShopBot, which is a traditional tool that allows you to mill wood, plastics, light metal. We have another machine, which is an abrasive water jet cutter, which allows us to actually do things like titanium, hardened steel, but also delicate materials like leather, cork, glass, etc. along the way. We have milling machines, which allow us to do electronics and molding and casting work. We have 3D printers of many varieties. This is the same type that was discussed earlier today in the talk about advanced 3D printing and manufacturing. But one of the things that the FabLab does is to not only focus on the specific tools, but processes that you can use the tools as part of. For example, 3D printers have a somewhat limited capability for materials, and so do some of the milling machines, but we can make molds and tooling that you can then do molding and casting and composites with to build upon. So we use a FabLab to not just build things, but to build things that you build things with along the way. FabLabs are about the interplay between bits and atoms overall. So all of the computer numerical control machinery is a way to go from a digital design, which is bits, into manipulating physical materials, which are atoms. But it's also important to be able to go in the other direction. So we have several technologies for being able to put a physical object in, scan it, create a digital representation of that that you can then edit, modify, and the like. So you could put both of those together and come up with a crude version of a digital copier, scanning it on one end and then reproducing it on the other end. Also work on electronics, so that small circuit board can be milled in the lab, and then the electronics components could be put together and tested, and also molding and casting kind of materials. So that's somewhat traditional Fab Lab, and then we add to that some somewhat unusual equipment, like we have a small excavator, and we have compressed earth block presses, so that we can take the material that we would excavate, mix in a little bit of cement, and actually make building blocks and components without a lot of embedded energy. So we can use the natural materials we have in the community to build the things that we need directly. That's some other views of our compressed earth block presses. So we get into natural building, and using this kind of technology allows you to make very energy efficient buildings because you can put in thermal mass in different ways. We also have some agricultural equipment like tractors and like along the way. We have enclosed, environmentally controlled greenhouses that we fabricated in the lab, and also some areas of the city of Detroit. This is a project I'll talk about a little bit more, but it's about a 20-acre project where we're beginning to build an intentional community in the middle of the city that's organized around sustainability principles and actually will be built by people in the community to gain not only the facilities, but also the skills to be able to continue to produce facilities like that. And then the other part of it is the social and economic tools involved in the process. And so those are agile project management, lean startup, and the utilization of techniques that come out of the software world, like Scrum or other agile project management techniques. You can use them in the hardware world when you have technologies like digital fabrication and allow you to very quickly try out physical prototypes of things, and you can iterate quickly. So in communities that don't have a tremendous number of resources to throw at projects, it's important to prove out your idea as inexpensively as possible and as quickly as possible. Because once you have something that you can demonstrate works, it's easy to attract interest and funding. But it's very important to be able to get to the point where you can show what it is that you're talking about. So those project management techniques are very important to go along with it also. To some extent, those are kind of the three legs of the stool: the built environment, the natural environment, and then the project management and lean startup techniques to be able to produce community level products. And from our perspective, community production includes the traditional fabrication capabilities and the like, which are assets in the community, not just for education, but for actually building real products that are used in the community. Also a design center for designing those components. And again, as we mentioned, there are only over 400 Fab Labs around the world. And those things can be designed in any lab, transferred to another lab, and that can be a distributed business model where you can receive a royalty for the intellectual property you might create here, and other people can produce that in another location and have their business dealing with the local customers and like along the way. But it's also extremely important component for community in terms of a team workspace that can use the design center and the fabrication along the way. And the part that we're most critically interested in is the development of human resourcefulness. And so all of these are means towards that end, because when it's all said and done, the quality of the community depends upon the quality of the people that are in the community. So what we're trying to do is fabricate community and using these tools along the way. So the paradigm shift that I'm going to discuss is one of moving from speculative jobs to functional work. This is something that's really enabled by things like digital fabrication. And so it starts out with a basic question of what do we really need in life and in our communities. And so we try to simplify this a fair amount, and it kind of comes down to we want to live within limits, but not poorly. And we want to begin to think about what really creates value in our lives. And that, from our perspective, is time for high quality life experiences. And that's what we feel will make us rich. Not chasing a lot of status symbols associated with spinny, blingy, shiny things, but really trying to get down to what is it that really should be part of our value system. We're engaged in a process of kind of going back and forth between what makes us feel whole and complete and how do we use the technologies available to be able to produce those directly in the community context. And so one of the mechanisms is to just survey people, and we work in communities around the world, and it's amazing how consistent the list of responses are when we ask people, what do you spend the most money on a monthly basis? What are your highest expense items in your budget? And we often translate those into hours, which is more meaningful to a lot of folks. And it's almost scary when you really break it down, and I didn't put that slide up because I didn't want the shock value necessarily, but when you actually look at the percentage of the time you spend to earn the dollars to pay for these things, it's really frightening that that much of my life disappears for this stuff, but these are the necessities of life. The order changes, but the list is fairly consistent. And I'm sure anybody who manages their budget, it makes sense. Food, shelter, housing in particular, utilities of all sorts, including water, transportation, clothing, personal accessories, furniture, health, but also education and childcare. And I know in this context, some of the organizations are already heavily involved in community-based activities that have nothing to do with digital fabrication, but that are making an impact on the expense items, for example, related to childcare and education. Another way is to kind of look at some of the studies from social anthropology and et cetera. You know, communities across history have relied on certain sets of things if they have maintained themselves over an extended period of time. Same kind of items, but if you look down towards the end of the list, you have three very important ones, which is companionship with other people, having something useful to do, and ability to entertain ourselves. Those are real distinguishing factors for sustainable communities of indigenous people throughout history. And that's something that we also often give fairly short attention to. So in the suite of things that it takes in terms of community building, we're dealing with the mechanics of life, but also the quality of life in terms of our social dynamics. And so our current scenario is one of speculative jobs. And so it may or may not be the same here, but the way the process usually starts in the United States is somewhere around high school or so, or with people in your family, you have a fateful conversation about what you ought to do with the rest of your life when you're young. And it usually has a lot to do with what you need to do to be able to support your family and become a respectable member of society, which is really to figure out some way to make money, to get a job, so that you can buy the things that you need in order to participate effectively. That sets us on a trajectory of getting an education and training for something which we feel will be productive in terms of a way for us to sell our time for dollars. It may not have anything to do with our passions, it may not have a lot to do with our real gifts or what motivates us. And so we're training ourselves for a speculative undertaking, and over the last 10 years, I think a lot of people have seen the weaknesses associated with depending upon opportunity for lifetime jobs, et cetera, along the way. And in Detroit, in particular, we generally are training ourselves to work for organizations that are outside of our community. So we don't even get the residual value of that company operating within the community and having the spillover effect of supporting the community itself. And so the business case is we're basically selling our time at wholesale prices. So we go work for a company. The company, and I own several companies. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but looking at it, it's an important thing to understand directly. We work for an organization, we get paid a wage, hopefully a living wage, but the markup exists within the company, whether it's in the product or the service that's sold. So we sell our time wholesale. The company gets the retail markup in that process. But the interesting dynamic is if you continue following that. So we take the money that we earn from that wholesale transaction, pay taxes on it, then we end up paying everybody else at their retail rate to do all the things for us that we don't know how to do for ourselves. And from a business perspective, selling wholesale and buying retail is a really losing strategy, right? You don't want to sell low and buy high. But for the most precious thing we have, which is our time that we can't make any more of, that's the process we're actually engaged in. And so a lot of this thought is that, is there another way to organize ourselves where we might be able to capture more of the value of the time that we spend ourselves along the way? Another aspect of this, other than the business case, is just a psychological case and a social, for us individually, and a social case for our communities. And one of the things that we find pretty strongly is that we're almost uniformly in discharge mode for most of our lives. You can hear it in a lot of the vocabulary we use. You know, during the week, Wednesday is hump day, right? I made it halfway, I can get it through the rest of the week. That's not a statement about the quality that I feel in my, in my work experience, right? It's like weekends are when I try to recharge, or I live for vacations. It's like we're suffering through the work experience to be able to get to these brief moments where we can recharge ourselves. That's really no good way to kind of go through life. There's also a strong dynamic at the community level that this kind of consume for status to fill the empty void model drives us towards a kind of scarcity-oriented perspective, which causes a lot of conflict in community. And there's a lot could be discussed and said about that. But the difference between having a life of worldview that's oriented around scarcity versus that's oriented around abundance is a tremendously important thing. And communities that are locked in the death throes often have a very scarcity-oriented perspective on life. Zero-sum game. If I get something, it has to come from someone else. One of the things that opportunities like digital fabrication and FabLabs have is to open it up to abundance. You can create new things that didn't exist before. So you can bring things into existence with collaboration with other people, and therefore the person next to me isn't a competitor, they're a collaborator, and it's worthwhile to work in ways that are more beneficial from a community perspective. And so what's the alternative? So the alternative is what's currently evolving as a scenario for functional work. And so the flow of that is kind of understanding one of the things that's evolving kind of as a new normal. As we've gone through these last economic shocks, we're dealing with climate change, we're dealing with energy descent issues, etc. There's a structural change underneath us that it's important to kind of appreciate. The world's not coming to an end. There's no immediate dire consequences in terms of the sky falling, but it's also not the case that things are about to go back to the way they were 15 years ago or 10 years ago. We're not waiting for a bounce back. There's really been a structural change, and we have to think about how to adapt ourselves and function in that new reality. And self-determination at the community level is also something that's slipping away from more and more people. And so that's another aspect to focus on in the flow aspect of what we're doing. Another piece of this is deep learning that really comes through participating in placemaking in the community as opposed to just academic study. So placemaking, experiential education, and formal study being the complete suite of things that's necessary to become whole and complete, not resting just on the academic and the formal study side at the exclusion of the others. And also the ability to use things like FabLabs, which gives us a lot of leverage, very highly capable tools that maximize the results that we can get for the time that we spend. And as a note, and coming from Detroit, this is an important note, we've had a huge disruption in the people's ability to work at jobs. Industrialization, automation, globalization has really changed the opportunities that are to work, because a lot of the factory jobs have been either automated or shifted to a different location. And so it's almost pleasurable to be able to buy the same tools that eliminated the need for us in factories and embed them in the communities and get the same leverage that the companies got for our time in the communities to be able to build things that are important to us. So the business case is basically to do three things. One is directly produce what we need, cut out several of the middlemen. If I want a house, build a house. If I want a car, build a car. If I want energy, build energy harvesting systems. The second thing is to collaborate with other people in the community to use those same tools to build products and services that are have a more democratic ownership basis at the community level. So it's an enterprise structure that is entrepreneurial, but a social entrepreneurial in addition to the economic entrepreneurship, and has a wealth creation mechanism that empowers more of the community along the way. That's the second component. And then the third component is to free up enough time doing those two to do the things that make us who we feel we are, and to allow us to pursue something we have enough passion about to get good enough so that we can add value to other people and reap the rewards from that. So there's a graphic that represents this, which was actually originally done by Fritjof Bergman, who's a proponent of a concept called new work, new culture, new economy, which kind of breaks down the model. This is our kind of current mode right now, which is basically most people are doing 100% job work. And we are on the timeline in Detroit, somewhere right on the border of this, moving towards splitting our time in a way that we do about a third of it engaged in directly producing things that we need ourselves and that we consume ourselves. A third of the time working in community using those same type of tools, producing things that other people buy for us to generate currency and the like. And with the leverage that the technology allows us, in about 2/3 of our time, and our time is about a nominal 45-hour work week, we can take care of our needs, which means we got about another third of the time to do the things that make me feel complete, that make me want to get up in the morning. I don't care whether anybody else wants to pay me for it. I don't really care whether anybody else is interested in it. But by engaging in these things that I'm really passionate about, I energize myself and it allows me to bring the best of who I am to all the other things that I do in life, right? So it's trying to be able to come up with a scenario where we can use the tools to provide for our needs, physical and functional, and also provide for our needs in terms of kind of mental and, if you want to, spiritually. And so one note that I'll have is that reducing expenses can be as important as increasing your revenue. And so one of the things that happens here, and we work on economic solvency a lot in the city of Detroit, one of the primary drivers isn't necessarily to make more money, it's to reduce expenses. And one of the ways to reduce your expenses is to use your time to be able to produce things that you don't have to buy, which is kind of what this lower quadrant, third, is about. So some of the things that we're involved in producing directly are housing and structures, energy systems, food systems, water systems, and transportation. That's the kind of that bottom third. The middle third is kind of collaborating with others to capture the full value of the innovation and to gain currency in exchange. We are dealing with dollar-mediated exchanges, which is a traditional economic basis. There are also a lot of people who are working with things like time banking, where it's kind of a one-to-one exchange of time. And that's a real interest to people because when we mediate things with dollars, we value things tremendously which are scarce, and we devalue things which are common. But some of the things that are most important in our community are common human traits, which we devalue significantly, and often are traits that women bring to the community in terms of the glue that binds and the social structures that make communities viable. And so many people are noticing that by doing one-to-one time transfer, you have ability to surface some of the things that are really important that end up getting devalued when we cost everything out directly in terms of dollars or pounds or euros. And then those things that make us feel kind of complete, that third arena, again, is partly self-fulfillment and partly a motivation to spend the time necessary to become expert. And as a side note, and this is really important in the Detroit area, this is kind of a no-lose strategy because the digital fabrication skills, the regenerative agriculture skills, the lean startup business skills are some of the highest paid jobs on the planet. So it's skilling yourself to be able to find alternative pathways of doing things in the community, but if you should decide not to want to go, you have an excellent skill set to be able to get a job and engage in the traditional kind of transactional process. And so the model overall is to work and spend less and create and connect more. And this is a quote from Julia Shore, who's a social and economic researcher. And by working and spending less and creating and connecting more, it leads to ecological benefits of emitting and degrading less, and human benefits of enjoying and thriving more. And that kind of encapsulates a lot of the model that we're trying to basically work towards. And so a look at some of the projects that we are bringing up to embody these concepts in the city of Detroit. One is we started out on the shelter side. So we started out, I think, as a lot of labs do and a lot of shops do. This is called a Shelter 2.0 project. It's something we can fabricate in the lab. From a computer-aided design file, you can have one of the machine tools cut these in a very precision way. It locks together and it performs a structure. It's a great gee whiz project and actually makes an excellent storage shed for all our agricultural projects also. But it got people to actually kind of realize that, wow, I can make something bigger than a table. And we moved from that point to actually building a 1,000-square-foot house, which we'll know better this winter, but looks like we're going to get to the point of being net zero energy in Detroit's climate over the course of the year. And so that means it generates as much energy over the course of the year as it uses. It generates a slight excess in the summer and uses more in the winter. In Detroit, we have net metering with electric utility, so we can sell in the summer and buy back in the winter at the same cost. So we use the utility as a huge storage battery, essentially. In other areas, you can do a different way, but the fact that you can actually go into a digital fabrication lab and build a house is kind of amazing. In Detroit, more people lose the ability to live in their house because they can't pay the utility bills than because they can't pay property taxes or mortgages. So getting to net zero energy is actually a huge game changer. And again, if we go into this time calculation of how much of your month, the time in your month you spend paying your utility bills, whether it's water, electric, etc., it's actually a huge part. If you take that off the table, you have a tremendous amount of time to invest in bettering yourself, to invest in your family, to invest in positive community activities, etc. We're also involved in food systems. So we have an aquaponics system. That's a community scale system. This one has a couple thousand tilapia in it, and a couple thousand square feet of growing space for vegetables in a closed loop system. So you feed the fish waste ends up fertilizing the plants clean the water, circulates back to the fish. So you have no overflow or spills or the need to have sewage associated with the closed. From a dollar perspective, is very effective also, because I don't need to spend money fertilizing the plant, and the rest of it is a fallout. It's called stacking functions in permaculture along the way. And so we're actually doing, real food production in the context of the community. So fish, protein, but we also grow plants, and these are all fertilized again by the excesses from the fish along the way, and that's in the hoop house that we built in the lab itself. And so we have several different growing mediums that we're working with here, and here's a smaller version of this that we have youth in the city of Detroit building, and this is kind of a home scale system. So the aluminum tubing we put together and use pond liners that you can buy easily, and so the fish inhabit this area. This area actually has a medium like gravel that certain types of plants grow in effectively. This is a raft system where the plant's roots just go down into the water, which gives you a very high yield for some kinds of things, but can't grow anything that needs mechanical structure because it doesn't have the roots embedded in anything to hold it up. Then this is a soil-based system that the nutrient-rich water kind of flows through the bottom of, and the water wicks up along with the nutrients and nourishes the plants that way. So the three different technologies. The raft-based system provides the highest yield per square foot but the lowest quality. So if you're in a market that really doesn't care about quality, that's a good way to go. The soil-based system gives you the highest quality but the lowest yield per square foot, and part of the reason is that you have a lot of other organisms in the soil that help mediate between the raw nutrients and the plants. Plants co-evolved in an entire food web, and so having all of those microorganisms and the like provides a much richer nutrient bait for the plants, so you get richer taste, better resistance to pests and the like along the way. And then the media-based system is a compromise in between. So the idea is folks can actually experiment with all of those, and then you can build out the system. I think at this point in time, this is 4 times the size it was initially because they realized that they were most interested in growing things like lettuce in the raft component. But you could, since you designed it and built it yourself, you can easily reconfigure it. So we started out with equal space, and as people kind of grow into the system, you can modify it. Then moving from there, we're doing a sustainability project on the grounds of our school. That's actually the initial CAD representation of the house that you saw a picture of earlier. So we're integrating that with an underground pond and an underground greenhouse. So we're successful growing food in our very inexpensive hoop house that we put up, but it murders us in the winter in Detroit to keep the temperature up high enough. We made a very bad choice of growing tilapia also, which are a warm water fish, and so maintaining that temperature for the fish, you live and learn. So we're switching that system over to lake perch and catfish, which like cool temperatures more, but we're also putting the growing system underground, so the earth moderates the temperature and only the glazing is above ground effectively. So in South America, they call these walapinis. It's an underground greenhouse. And in Detroit, what we're beginning to do is actually just take some abandoned houses, strip the house off. You've already got a nice foundation basement, use that as a growing space, and just put glazing over the top. So it's also a model of urban reuse. But the idea here is to have on the grounds of this high traffic location a model of sustainability in housing and food production and energy exchange between them. And for example, in the house, we're doing things like rotating, this is what we're building towards, rotating out, for example, a kitchen from an omnivore kitchen for people who eat pretty much anything in the food chain all the way to the other extreme, which is a raw foods kitchen. And you can optimize the kitchen, so it's very easy to do the different ones, but it's also almost amazing to see how much infrastructure you need behind an omnivore kitchen to support all the different types of cooking that you do versus what's necessary in a raw kitchen. So people can make informed decisions without having a lot of things hidden behind. And it's also grown to the extent that we have a, sorry, can't read that effectively, but we actually have an eco-district team that's put together. I'm the team leader, have somebody from one of our institutions of higher learning, Michigan State University, which is our local agricultural college, their Greening Institute, someone from City Planning Commission, who, this is the person who wrote the urban agriculture ordinances in the city of Detroit, and a leader of one of the food-based groups in Detroit, and somebody from the executive branch who's in building safety and engineering, come together in a team, and we're doing a 20-acre project to catalyze change in a 320-acre area of the city of Detroit. And the map looks, this is our 20-acre area that we purchased, and this is the 320-acre footprint. And the idea is for a new center of community production to be built here using our existing center for community production to do the green building involved in the process. But for the people in this community and the people who are interested in moving into a community, that's about 3P kind of principles, really focusing on financial sustainability, profit, ecological stability, and the social dynamics and health of the people, the P part for the people, to be able to use this platform for community production to be able to rebuild the community, build houses in the community, build energy systems, to do district level projects and individual home and block level projects, catalyzed around people in the community learning the skills to be able to rebuild a community based on design and ethical considerations that are important to them, with the outcome being that we have a community that matches what we want it to be, but we also have a skill set that allows us to build sustainable communities, which is a very highly valuable skill set. And so the city is about to invest a lot of money in rebuilding in Detroit. And so this model is about taking the equivalent amount of dollars you would have spent on a commercial project and directing it towards this project where you get the same end result in terms of the infrastructure, better results because it has a lighter footprint in terms of energy needs and infrastructure needs, but a much better outcome because now you have a group of people who have had an opportunity to develop their talents to be able to participate more widely in the economics of the region overall. The transportation side, we built a little bicycle. And this was not even an original design of ours. There's a N55 in the Netherlands, a group that does a lot of very interesting work in terms of do-it-yourself type projects. Had an open source project that they did. I guess you call it pseudo open source. They don't release the plans for it, but they say it's open source. So we took the liberties then of taking their pictures and reverse engineering in the lab, the bike, with a ruler, and about 15 minutes you can kind of come up with the basics of this. Anyway, we did a CAD file and we designed this, which is a cargo bike. You can buy some traditional off-the-shelf bike parts, but this was actually modeled on some exchange work that we do in Africa on energy systems. And part of the design for this is allow people there to use mobile solar energy systems to be able to move around and provide people with charging capabilities for cell phones and batteries around the different places. But we were also invited to the first Maker Fair at the White House. This is President Obama checking out our bike right outside the Oval Office on the grounds of the White House. Very interesting getting this past Secret Service onto the grounds of the White House. But the bike project was an interesting one in and of itself, and that's a useful thing that people can see. I mean, it's not kind of a toy item. I can see how I can use that to take vegetables that I'm growing to the farmer's market, or I can see how I can use that for some like commercial purposes, and that starts getting people's minds thinking about maybe this isn't just a toy. this is something that we can actually do some real practical work with. The Fab community overall is beginning to interoperate with this OS vehicle, open source vehicle project, which is an interesting type of vehicle, and several of the labs are working on components of it. In Barcelona at the last Fab conference, there's discussion about that. We decided to go in a slightly different direction. There's another open source project called WikiSpeed, which started with an XPRIZE project of developing a 100-mile-per-gallon car, and they went fairly far in that competition, but it's a modular design where you have the ability to innovate in the car in a very effective way. And so we actually have a group of high school students that's building what we hope to be a 100-mile-per-gallon biodiesel vehicle between now and August, and they're going to drive it from Detroit to Boston to show at the Fab 11 show that's coming up. And so by building the car, we're not going to build the engine. We're going to buy a crate engine. We're going to reprogram it for higher mileage, but build the complete frame, which will pass highway crash test standards in the United States, do the complete composite body by machining all of the molds, laying up the carbon fiber and the like in the lab. So other than wheels and real standard auto components, we really mean building the car in the lab itself from computer-aided design components and then iterating it. The standard design is a gasoline version. We're building a biodiesel version. One of the reasons is because there's a crop that we can grow in Detroit. It's called field pennycress. We can plant in September, grow it over the winter, harvest it in April, and on about an acre of land, we can get about 100 gallons of biodiesel. If you get 100 gallons per acre and 100 miles per gallon, that's 10,000 miles per acre per year. That's a fuel allotment. So you could have an acre and a half piece of property with a 500 square foot footprint house, as I showed, which is net zero energy, grow food over the summer, grow energy stock over the winter. You can kind of start imagining drawing a line around your property and being able to have control over the things that you need in order to actually live a viable life. I'm not saying everybody wants to grow all their own fuel and the like, but understanding the mechanics is a very liberating aspect of you being able to strategically engage with the economy at large, not because I absolutely have to, because I can't survive if I don't, but I have the ability to do everything I need myself. What parts of this do I want to do, and what parts of this do I want to purchase from the outside? And hopefully I blew through that in enough time that we might have a moment or two for questions. Okay.
Thank you very much indeed, Blair. We absolutely do have a few minutes indeed for some questions for Blair. So who would like to kick us off? I think there is a roving mic. Who's got the roving mic? This guy over here. So put your hand up. Anybody got any questions for Blair? I know I've noticed a lot of you tweeting about today, so clearly there's a lot of interest being generated here. John, we can kick off with you.
Hello, Blair. One of the things that we struggle with, and be interested to hear your thoughts on it, was we get a lot of people coming in with fairly low-level skills at an entry level. How do you upskill them to the level where they're able to make a car? It's a big leap.
So our rules for using the lab is that you're not a danger to yourself, not a danger to the other people with you, and not a danger to equipment. As long as you pass those levels, there's no math level proficiency, reading level proficiency, etc. And what I guess our principle and what we have noticed is that we have a tremendous range of tools and pedagogies and programs to be able to teach anybody almost anything. The issue is, do you want to learn it? Are we trying to force feed people, or are they trying to pull the information out of us? And so by getting engaged in a real project way over my head, like a car or a house, one sort of eliminates the fear of failure, because it doesn't seem like I ought to do this and be able to do this in the first place. It's not like there's a canned answer that it'd be right or wrong. I'm in there struggling with a bunch of adults who are still trying to figure this out too, so I'm open to participating. But the other part is, now I see why I need to know the math. So you do a lot of just-in-time education as we go through. So for example, we don't do a whole lot. You have to do 6 months of computer-aided design and then 6 months of computer-aided manufacturing. You come in and we start building stuff. And then you start understanding how the pieces fit together. And now I know why I need to do this. Let me step back a little bit. Can you teach me a little bit of this? And it kind of falls in. And the FabLabs talk about this, the just-in-time versus just-in-case educational model. And so in the schools that I'm involved in Detroit, I mean, the trust me, 10 years from now, this will be useful to you does not fly at all at this point in time. So by getting involved in something that, we deal with a car, I mean, we're talking about transportation and why cities are laid out as they are and how different forms of transportation can allow that 320-acre subdivision to be done in a different way. So you start pulling in all of the stuff in the curriculum, start looking at how people have solved the same problems through history, and then you have an opportunity. People just start learning about things because it's interesting. And when you look at what the youth are doing outside of school, it's not that they're zoning out. I mean, they're very intense about doing a whole lot of things. It's just that the classical subjects in school is not at all related to where the interests are, but this kind of ties it in. So what we see is this is an opportunity to get the degree of commitment and engagement so that all the other pieces can fill in. But you have to be prepared to shift the locus of control in terms of teaching completely, because it's not you're matriculating through a course and I'm control of the process and here's a lesson for today. It's what pops up. What's the teachable moment that just occurred in front of me, and I have to be prepared to respond to that when somebody knows they want to know something. And that's a whole different model for educators. Right?
Thank you, John. This lady at the front here. Microphone's on its way.
Hello Blair, I'm Stacey. I'm a student at Northwest Regional College, and I was wondering, this is a bit amateur because this is the first time that I've heard about FabLabs, so I was wondering if you could sum up for me what the big vision for FabLab is. Can you sum it up in a wee way just to kind of direct what the bigger vision for it is?
So the big vision is an interesting question. So the FabLabs are discussed now often in a kind of 4-stage roadmap. So the big vision is kind of stage 4. We're at stage 1, by the way. So the big vision, I think, is encapsulated by a question that the person who started the whole FabLab network, Neil Gershenfeld, kind of put out, is kind of thinking about how we'll live, work, and play when anybody can make anything anywhere. And currently we have labs that allow us to do a tremendous amount of one-off, customized, innovative kind of development of physical stuff. One of the things we're developing in the lab are the new machines for the lab. So kind of the level 2 of the roadmap is using all the equipment in the lab to replicate the equipment in the lab with open source designs, driving the cost down, opening it up to more people. Then level 3 is a different type of machine that allows you to assemble things, flexible materials. And then generation 4 is kind of like the Star Trek replicator, where at a molecular level you have, instead of big machines going in, either adding a lot of material or removing material, you have molecular scale machinery that's following a digital code that's embedded in material that can kind of organize. An example being plants and animals and the whole biological system. So the long-term perspective is really about democratizing the means of production and making it available to everybody. And that's a huge game changer. I mean, major, the issues of socialism versus capitalism versus communism is about who controls the means of production, right? And so if everybody controls the means of production at the local level, there's a whole lot of other things we can think about trying to operationalize. So I think, from my perspective, the big issue of the Fab Lab is the way the technologies are progressing allows us to fundamentally rethink a lot of the things we took for granted and a lot of the infrastructure that we depend upon. Short-term, big picture, is it's an excellent way to gain skills and capabilities and thinking about the emerging areas that are coming, whether it's in commercial practices, industrial practices, et cetera, along the way. Does that begin to address what you're searching for? And having the skills to be able to understand the fabric of the economy and the production that you're a part of. And we take so many things for granted and we just kind of sort of buy stuff. We don't necessarily look at the total life cycle cost, who is abused with the extractive technologies to produce it, who gets abused when we discard the stuff. I mean, there's that whole process. But, so many areas of just economic activity and mechanisms of concentration and wealth and the like, we don't look at on a day-to-day basis because there's nothing we can do about it. We actually have the means to start reformulating the way we organize ourselves in terms of businesses and manufacturing things in different ways. We start looking at a lot of things that it wasn't worthwhile to look at before, and we engage ourselves as citizens more in the process, which is what we're trying to promote. Okay.
Thank you very much, Stacey. Anybody else have a question? I think we have time for one more question, possibly? Oh, okay, we'll take two. Pat first, and then the lady at the back in the turquoise teal dress.
Thank you very much, Claire. Blair, as a funder, I'm constantly preoccupied by how do you go about funding these things. Could you say something about some of the funding models that you're familiar with, how you get this stuff off the ground? I hope there are people in this room who are thinking, how can we go back to my community or institution or whatever and start doing this? Could you say something about potential approaches to funding?
Sure. My answer usually disappoints everybody in the FabLab community in that none of our funders fund us for FabLabs. We contract in education, child welfare, social services arena, juvenile justice, mental health, and community development projects. And what people are really interested in is we have an opportunity to change people's mindset about their own viability, sense of agency, and the like, individually within their family and then within their communities. And so we compete in education on educational key performance indicators. We compete with other agencies in child welfare or foster care by helping people move to independence. We happen to use things like digital fabrication because it's a real effective way, therapeutic model, if you will, of allowing people to actually find the power that they have within themselves, find things that they're really interested and passionate about, and then start applying themselves, developing a personal agenda, and moving forward. And so our funding largely comes from projects, training, therapeutic interventions that the FabLab is a perfect vehicle for. You know, I started out trying to convince people that FabLabs are a great thing to be funded. My personality type is one that I don't do a really good job begging for funding over extended periods of time. So I tried to find something that was more suitable to the way I go about doing things. And I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm used to developing business models and the like. And so we developed a mechanism of allowing us to stay with our core mission of empowering people in the community and tapping into funding streams that are already present where people are trying to do that in various ways, solving the purpose for them, but also building the core capabilities that we need along the way. So it's a somewhat non-traditional model, but it's worked effectively for us.
Final question for now, just from the lady at the back.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say first, thanks. You know, I find this really motivational because I think the sense of discontent that maybe exists at this time, just generally how people feel about politics, alienation from, you know, feeling properly represented and all of that, that this, in a way, it gives people back that sense of agency. If you talk, and it may be like the questions you seem to be asking about motivation is, even for education, that it starts with you, like, what are you good at? What are you interested in? And I was just thinking about it, wonder how you give that back to people. Like, you know, we have this chronic housing shortage now, and it's starting to make people think about how would it look if you had more power. And, you know, people feel they have no skills because they have no power and they have no voice. So it's how to kind of mobilize all those things and bring them back. And I just think it's a fantastic way to kind of begin the, as you say, paradigm shift in yourself and think about things. And I think it's great for the young people that you kind of begin to think about the whole sense of agency, how you can build that and become so sort of self-reliant, but within a kind of a community context. Sounds a bit muddled, but very excited by what you've said and by the sense of agency and how it could be a catalyst maybe for all the discontent that exists and you see around you, especially with young people now so alienated from the job opportunities in the way we're moving.
We also, let me mention that it provides a very interesting opportunity for everybody in the community to get involved. The intergenerational projects. I mean, we have people who know how to build houses much better than anybody in a FabLab ever would, not using these technologies. If you want to understand what a house is supposed to do for a person or how you use materials, then they get involved in the project. Young folks get involved in the project, and so you all kind of get together and you begin to have exchanges between different groups of people. You know, these folks have been outdated. For example, in the folks in the construction area, you know, technologies move past them, so they're kind of to the side. This gives them an opportunity to come back to the center and contribute in a way that they couldn't before. They're bringing their energy to the mix. So it really does, have an opportunity to catalyze an entirely different dynamic, which seems to be really productive for the community.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Blair.
All right, you're welcome.
Absolutely fascinating. I'm sure you'll all agree. Round of applause for Blair and everybody. Thank you so much. I'm sure you'll all agree that was an absolutely fascinating talk there. I've just had a couple of questions about the Wi-Fi network here. If you're keen to get logged on, the network is guest, and the password is Music City 2014, just in case you were having trouble. Puzzles, we'll be announcing the winner a little later, probably just before lunch, but keep up the good work. I see a few tables are already making some progress, so that's great. As I said there, fascinating story from Detroit. We're going to bring things back closer to home just before coffee time. Northern Ireland's FabLabs have been pioneering work around peace building and community resilience using digital technologies. And here to tell us more about this is Adam Wallace, who is manager of the Belfast FabLab at the Ashton Centre. Please give him your best welcome. It's Adam Wallace, everyone.
Give us a second.
Oh, thank you very much for having us. Thank you very much, Blair. That was absolutely inspiring. We've had the pleasure, the FabLab team in Northern Ireland, to actually go to one of Blair's labs in Detroit, Insight Focus, and I can say it is possible to have FabLab envy. And I will be having a conversation with Pat Colgan from SUPB about a small mini digger and a tractor for our future FabLabs. I'm here to talk today about our FabLab project, and particularly around peace building and community development. FabLab in Northern Ireland, we've been established for a couple of years now, and it's just to review some of the lessons learnt, to explore some of the models that we have, and particularly focus on how we use that for peace building. So one of the first things that we did was build a giant arachnoid, and I don't recommend that for peace building. We love the idea of FabLabs being anarchic, so what we did was that we looked at all the ways in which we could begin to work, particularly work together and do things differently. I think it's a great opportunity to be able to do things differently. One of those was a unique partnership between the Ashton Community Trust and the Nerve Centre. We hadn't worked together before. Both organisations had a history of grassroots activism. That's really what got both organisations started. So there was a common bond between the two organisations initially. But really what we had to do was to say, well, what can FabLab do? We understood the why we were doing this, but we were really looking at how we could make it work, particularly in a partnership. So to really explore that, we needed to sort of acknowledge that there was around the way in which we're funded through the Special European Programmes body is specifically to look at peace. So we had to acknowledge the impacts of the conflict. So it's important to say that this was effectively part of our starting point, was to say what has happened and what is currently happening within our communities, within our broader society, and how do we actually relate this to digital fabrication. The FabLab at the Ashton Community Trust is, just on this map here, is within Lower North Belfast. It's a highly complex area of Belfast. There's lots of interface areas. We're at the sort of edge of a lot of community development. We acknowledge that there's been a massive amount of impact, particularly in this small area of the city. The legacy of that has been there's been chronic unemployment. We're talking about large areas of the area of North Belfast that are just simply unused. Segregation, health problems, educational issues. It's in the top 3 areas of deprivation within Belfast and within the UK. So when we were putting this digital fabrication lab, we had to acknowledge that our starting point was this community, and that was going to influence how we were going to build our vision for peace building. Just a little about the Ashton Community Trust. It's been running for about 20 years now. Again, it's a grassroots community organisation, and it was born from the legacy of the conflict. It was born from people within the community recognising there was a lack of services. The only way to do that was to get together and to do something, to work together. In the 20 years, it's been a phenomenal success story. There's 6 major areas in which it focuses on. Really, it's about community, grassroots organisations coming together and being able to empower themselves and their communities for good. The 6 main areas: training and employment, arts, culture, victims and survivors, youth engagement, childcare, community development, and neighbourhood regeneration. So you can see the areas it focuses on are the areas in which needed address, the areas which had required most thought because of the legacy of the impact. Most recently, the Ashton Centre have also brought in digital fabrication and design thinking using the FabLab and social enterprise. So these are 2 new areas in which we're beginning to expand, new to the organisation. So I think it's fair to say that FabLabs are disruptive, but also disruptive to the organisations they bring in, that bring them in, because they require a slightly different way of working. And because you can do almost anything, you begin to start questioning how you've actually worked in the past and how you can begin to reorientate some elements of your organisation to actually benefit from digital fabrication. So the peace model. Again, the peace model is something that we've thought about through our work with communities, with young people, with community organisations, with adults, a very broad spectrum of people that we've worked with. This was built around our funding model, which was, as mentioned before, from the Special European Programmes body under Peace 3. So we had grounds with which to begin to build this. Both organisations have experience of being able to work in a peace context, so we're coming from a strong orientation there, but we were beginning to say, how can we begin to demonstrate what we do in digital fabrication? How does it make a difference to the people that we're already engaging with? We were aware as well of I suppose, the broader strategy. You know, there was lots of thinking about T-Buck together, building united communities, other Peace 3 strategies, reimagining communities, other Peace 3 programs that were using technology, including one with the Nerve Centre, teaching divide history. So there was this legacy there that we were beginning to build upon, but this one was built around digital fabrication. This project actually was with victims and survivors. It's part of a transitional justice program that was run by the Bridge of Hope, which is one of ACT's departments, and it was really looking at how we can begin to engage the conversation around issues of justice, the legacy of justice within our society, but also begin to say, what can we add in the sphere of creating, making, imaginative play, begin to open up conversations, and begin to do things in a slightly different way. And this group here built a bespoke piece of art, but they did it from scratch. And they didn't know they were going to do it when they started it, but it was one of these things where we began to say, if you did this, if you began to think about yourself and your own identity, and you summed it up as an image, what would that be? And got the ball rolling and began to inspire them to be creative makers as well. So we've roughly sort of brought it into 5 levels around our peace model, the first being creative collaboration and engagement in neutral activities. So that's the sort of where we want to begin. Both FabLabs are spaces where anyone can come and do anything. It's interesting just to say, as Blair says, we don't have any stipulations on who can come in. You have to fill very basic criteria, which is you can come in, you can operate the equipment safely, you're not going to make anything that's going to damage anything or hurt anyone, and you're in. Both labs have been phenomenally successful of that. Our FabLab is in an area which would be considered 98% Catholic, and we would work with community organisations that would be working with 98% Protestant people as well, and we would have them in the lab, and we do projects vice versa. Level 2, creative collaborative engagement with an identity or division focus. So we're beginning to drill down here. So we're saying, let's work together, but let's focus it on something specific, which is around identity and division. Some of the programs which we run would be relatively technically simple, but very powerful, very impactful. And that's something we've learned from this process, is that there is a high end, which is building cars, building houses, wiki speed. The other end is looking at how we use simple technologies for great effects. So things like creating t-shirts, creating pieces of bespoke art, but using digital fabrication techniques is incredibly powerful. So one of our first projects was to do a piece of art on the interface areas where young people actually began to put images of themselves on the piece wall for a temporary exhibition there, and they created those in FabLab using new methods. Level 3, accredited skills development in communities impacted by the conflict. So we recognise that there's a dearth of skills which are needed for a 21st century economy. FabLab is a place in which you can gain that, not only relevant skills and saying this is something that you can perhaps take to industry, whether it's using a 3D design package or CNC controlled machines, but it's looking around how we can actually begin to say, this is an environment in which you can learn as well. We are not going to be like school, but you will have an educational experience. We'll meet you where you are, and accredit the learning in that. It's really important that we can begin to say, you have come so far, so put milestones in that. So as we've mentioned earlier, we've developed accreditations with NIOCN to actually be able to say, young people are beginning to become skilled up in this. We're looking to get how we can extend that into new pathways. Level 4. A therapeutic program of mental health interventions targeted at victims and survivors of the conflict. So across the FabLab network, we've begun to see that this is a fantastic model for therapeutic exercise. And we're saying that in some ways you're able to engage with people in a radical way where you couldn't do with usual therapeutic approaches. Making is something that brings us together. Making is something that begins to open up avenues for conversations or for ways in which we can begin to think about ourselves and others in a different way. 5th level as well, schools-based interventions to encourage young learners to engage with conflict history and narratives from the other side. So we do a lot of work with schools, and we'll be talking about that earlier, but this one is to say, how can we begin to sort of address issues and narratives that sort of start early on in life, but begin to cement themselves in our schooling system, and how can we get children and young people working together? This was a project that we ran in Belfast, and we worked with 2 schools, Newton Breeder High School and St Joseph's School on the Ravenhill Road, bringing young people together in large-scale projects to be actually work together and begin to say, what is it about yourself that you want to express? What do you have in common? How can you begin to sort of focus down on things that you like about yourself, but you can also recognize you like about others? I suppose we're thinking about how we use the technology, and it's essentially around social impact, social change, and creativity. It has been said, I mean, the FabLab is set up technical equipment in the room today. That's just one element. The key aspect around FabLab is how we communicate how the technology can work, and that's getting the right people in the lab, getting the right people who can work in FabLab and actually begin to say, this is not just a space where we can do R&D, but this is a space in which we can begin to inspire others and change the world. I think that we also explore the high-tech to low-tech relationship between technology. So part of what the FabLab in Belfast and FabLab at the Nurse Centre are really looking to do is to say, how do we make this more user-friendly as we can? How do we make it more affordable? How can we explore low-tech solutions? How can we get more people involved in digital fabrication? How can we get them using technology? So we're constantly asking ourselves those questions, and it could be 3D printer building, it could be sourcing new ways of using existing equipment, it could be sourcing new techniques as well. Making things together. As human beings, we've always made things together, and that's a key element of what we do. We sit down and we make together, and it creates an atmosphere within a lab where people are making. They naturally cooperate, they naturally collaborate. Making things together is important because we want people to come in and actually spend time in the lab So part of that is to say, let's get the atmosphere right. It's a key aspect of what we do is to say, we have the technology, but we also welcome people to come in, and getting the atmosphere right in the lab. And I hope some of you have been in our Fab Labs, because we work hard at being able to say this is a space that's welcoming for everyone, and the technology sits alongside that. Engagement. So trying to engage people in fun, new ways, ensuring that it's relevant. We want people to play and discover. Not just doing what we usually did, but using technology, but actually starting to play and say, can we do things differently? Engagement. As earlier, we're in a community of high deprivation, and make 3D printing relevant to people who are at their jobs. And we flipped it on and said, well, what would people want to use this technology for? What's useful? And we thought, well, if you've got a broken laptop, we can fix it. Or if you've got a broken iPhone, we can fix it. And that's an attractive way for people to be able to come in and be able to engage with us in FabLab. It's also highly environmental. It's not throwing a product away and just purchasing another. It's seeing how we can use technology to be able to fix things. It's also being able to then to open up the back of a computer and be able to explore that with that person. So we run Fix-It Clubs as a way of being able to engage with a community who predominantly were not tech savvy. Encourage problem solving. So you can start with design challenges, you can make it highly practical, but also from what we'd like to do from a societal point of view is to ask bigger questions, which is, how might you reimagine your community? How might you reimagine interface areas? And it's something we're doing with young people and architects, is to say, if you could reimagine your this interface area or your community, what would it look like? But using 3D modeling, using the FabLab to be able to execute some of these ideas, we can advance the concept beyond just an illustration on a page or an idea or a conversation. We can make it tangible, real. And that's how we get people involved. That's how we engage people. Create a space where making can focus on something. So as you said, in our piece model, we had elements where we would focus upon identity, where we would focus and drill down into pieces. But this is really important. We did some work with young people in youth diversion. So during the marching season in Belfast, we would work with our local youth club, the New Lodge Youth Club and New Lodge Arts, to be able to say, we have young men at risk of antisocial behaviour. How can we engage them? So ensuring that the space has a focus, that we can drill down and we can actually have a purpose for being there. And we've worked with young men on creating their own bespoke PA systems for DJing, and we've also worked with young men on creating sets for huge games of Laser Quest and Laser Tag, which all contribute to stopping antisocial behaviour. This is just a short 90-second movie of just some of the work that we do.
I think the impacts that FabLab Belfast makes in an area like New Lodge and an area like North Belfast is that it brings something completely different, has a different offering for, in my case, children and young people that we work with, but also the adults. It's bringing something that otherwise would be completely inaccessible to the children and young people that we work with. Their schools don't have access to this equipment. They wouldn't have access to the equipment. New Lodge Arts, New Lodge Youth Centre have worked with the FabLab Belfast on quite a range of different projects, starting with general after-school programs where we've brought young people from the age of 8 to 11 round to the FabLab to basically learn new skills in digital fabrication, from using the computers and the 3D printers to create their ideas, and through to kind of more outcome-based programs where we've been looking at creation of a community garden.
There was initially a 3D model made around FabLab of the garden, and together the young people and the workers have helped to create stuff for the garden, like different signs, and they've even painted the tires and done most of it all themselves.
Since they've been using FabLab, they're more confident using the computers and the laser cutter, sticker maker. They make signs for the youth centre, for the toilets, the rooms, stickers for the garden. It's just, it helps with all the programs that we're running.
The best thing about coming to FabLab was making a phone case with Steve. We got the measurements online and then we made it on the 3D printer. Before coming to FabLab, I never used to like using computers because they were boring, but now I like using them because you can make what you want. The best thing about having a FabLab in New Lodge is getting to make things for your community and for the youth centre.
So just for linking off on that for future pathways, we're just at the beginning of this, really. It's been 2.5 years, and it doesn't feel that way. I do recall when MIT shipped over the equipment, and we were unboxing it in North Belfast, and we put together equipment. We were searching for the manual that says how to do the peace building bit, and they'd left it out. So we've had to do this ourselves. We've had to figure out how this is going to work, and it's been some experimentation, some trial and failure. But that's the key thing about FabLab, is that that's what we want to encourage. Future pathways are going to include a commitment to socially engaged work. They're going to include embedding our FabLabs within our communities as resource centres, as tools, as places where we have skills and knowledge, unlike anywhere else. They're going to look at continued accreditation, so how can we begin to make the most of a young person's experience in that and really get them on a journey, on a pathway to maybe employment or to study. They're going to be looking at the sort of larger esoteric projects that's happening here in Derry with Artichoke and David Besser Temple Project, where you'll be looking at the ways in which you can use digital fabrication and people can get involved in making large-scale events that really focus on our identity and focus on what we do and how we behave as well. And we're also looking at elements like Peace Tech Lab as well, which is partnership, working with university, working with INCOR, working with different international organisations to be able to say, let's look broadly at how technology can start to build peace. It could be technology, web-based technology, movie making, animation, and digital fabrication, and start to build a great resource for people that we can actually share worldwide to help and improve the citizens of not just our community, but of the entire world. So thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed the morning so far, and you get to enjoy the rest of it and enjoy your coffee. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much indeed, Adam. Continued success with the Ashton Centre there. It sounds very, very interesting, the work you're doing, and best of luck. Thank you very much indeed. Now it's time for coffee. A little leg stretch. We are tight for time, so please do make the most of it. Have a look at what the FabLab is doing outside in the hallway. Network, talk, and complete your puzzles if you can. Keep working at those, that would be great. And if you could be back here just about 5 to 12, that would be great. 5 to 12. Thank you so far. We heard earlier from Blair about the FabLab experience in Detroit. Now it's time to head back north. We're going quite far north, believe it or not. One of the earliest adopters of FabLabs was Iceland. And the country has embraced the concept at a national level through the recent economic crisis and the even more recent recovery. And here to give us some insights into this is Frosty. Yes, that's his real first name from Iceland. Frosty Gislason. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He's from the Iceland FabLab network. We're delighted to have him. Please give your warmest welcome to Frosty.
Hello, my name is Frosty Gislason. I come from Iceland. I've been so lucky. I've been in many parts of the world seeing the FabLabs and what people are doing. And one thing that I like to do is like when you come to FabLabs, then you're always getting out of your comfort zone. And since when I was in Japan, I wanted to lead the Japanese. We had 1,000 people in the room, and I wanted to lead them through some karate. And John Pito told me that the Irish people were much more crazy than the Japanese people. So I want you to stand up, and my dream is to do a river dance with you guys. So please stand up. No, everybody, I mean it. And Mike is going to give us the music.
What music?
No, the music you're going to sing. Okay. So you will teach me as well. For 10 seconds. It's only 10 seconds. Okay. Okay.
You have to point them in.
1, 2,
3, 4.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a, yes, please give us a huge applause for us all. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about our FabLabs in Iceland, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we are building up our network of FabLabs and what our dreams are and why we are doing this. So I have one question. How many of you guys have been to a FabLab before? Okay, that's nice. Okay, that's great. Applause for you. Yeah. So you may have heard about that there was a collapse in the Icelandic community, in the economy of Iceland in 2008, and what we found out that we needed to do something to build up ourselves up again, and Innovation Center Iceland was formed just a few months before the crisis hit Iceland, and the mission of the center is to strengthen the competitive position of Icelandic business and increase the quality of life, and diffuse knowledge and give support to entrepreneurs and growth companies and innovative enterprises, and to excel in technology research, product development, and analysis and testing. And there was a group, McKinsey Group. They took a look at the Icelandic economy and what was going on there, and we are very depending on fisheries, fishing industry, and energy-intensive industry. And what has been happening that those industries cannot grow so much in the future because they're related because we need to use natural resources. And we have the tourism industry that can grow up to a certain level, and it cannot grow continuously, and other goods as well. So what we will need in Iceland, we need new exports. And we need to do something to do about that. I'm going to have a little sip of my vodka. We always drink that in Iceland, and brennivin. So what we did, we put emphasis in supporting incubators, and we have 8 incubators with 100 companies and now 300 employees. And like we like to mention, like in proportion, if it would be in America, that would mean 100,000 companies and 300,000 employees. And we did held seminars across Iceland, and we negotiate to the foreign banks about getting access to their houses for startup companies and incubators. And we presented studies on scenarios that for our future, and we noticed that the climate and economy is changing, and we need to be competitive. I've been trying to rehearse this word for quite a time. So in 2008, we started. This is my island. This is Vestmann Island. That is south of Iceland. We have 4,200 inhabitants on the island, and there are in whole Iceland there are 328,000 inhabitants. And there was this guy from Ireland who was working. His father is from Ireland. He was working with me in the municipality, Smári McCarthy. He was watching a lecture on the internet where Neil Gersifeld was talking about digital fabrication, and he sent him an email, and Neil invited him to come to Norway, where he met this guy, Hákon Karlsson, and Smári McCarthy came back to me, and we decided to start a FabLab in Iceland, and we contacted the Innovation Center and started the new FabLab. And this is Hákon Karlsson. He's a legend in the FabLab world, one of the first FabLabs in the world, and he's always emphasizing it's all about people. And FabLab is actually a global network of people working together who want to cooperate and share knowledge. So this was in 2008. We had this single track economy needing for new options, and young people need for new horizons, and we needed like new visions. We needed to open our minds towards new ideas and technology. And today we have 6 FabLabs that are running currently, and there are more to come. There is one, but most of the FabLabs have been successful, but not all. There is one FabLab that we had to, like, it is currently closed, but we are trying to get it up and running again. And the reason why I'm mentioning that, because like when you are starting FabLabs, it's very important that you get the right personnel to be in charge of the FabLabs, and that person needs to be social and be ready to transfer knowledge, and also to network within the community, and also like both locally and globally. And now we have more than 330 FabLabs in the world. And why are we doing this? We are empowering people, and what we have seen that kids who are coming to our lab, they are getting more and more self-esteem by using the digital fabrication techniques, and we are empowering the kids. And what we are seeing is that they sign into formal education, where we are teaching in both elementary school and the secondary schools, and that leads them to learn how to solve different types of problems. And what we'll eventually do is create new jobs, and also that will hopefully lead to new inventions. And the people who are using the lab, they use it in different ways. They are using it for personal fabrication, and the idea is to increase the technical literacy and technical capability. And we want to be a venue for innovation and increase the competitiveness. How was that? Good? The competitiveness of the local companies, educational institutions, and we want to increase the diversity of jobs. So, as Blair was explaining earlier, we have all those different capabilities in the FabLabs. This is our lab in Westman Island, and about the 3D printing, milling machines, laser cutter, and what I find one of the most important is the video conference system that we have, where we have a window to the rest of the world, where we communicate and exchange ideas and knowledge. We are using open source software and at least free software, and we are running educational programs for kids from 12 to 15 years, 16 to 20 years, and we are also running the Fab Academy and also like more shorter workshops. We are using like these different types of procedures. I'm not going to go through that, but like when FabLab Ireland network will, is it already, is it formally, has it started? Or yeah, sorry if I'm offending somebody. Like I would encourage you to participate in the Fab Academy, where we can get a lot of education and stuff like that. I will go quickly through those slides because I was asked to emphasize on other things. Like some of the products that have come out of the FabLab is this is a company that is called Remake Electric, which are making this electrical like switches like that can measure the load of the energy that you're using. Do you have the word in English? No, nobody? I can teach you better English later. So what they did is there was a person who attended the Fab Academy and learned how to program microcontrollers. He contacted the company and told them that he had those skills. The company originally was only going to show with LEDs how much the load was going to be. So when he told them what skills he had gotten from the Fab Academy, he was hired instantly and is the product developer for that company. And now they have implemented microcontrollers in it, so you can control the energy consumption from the internet in your house. And these are students from the secondary schools. What they got the assignment to increase the value of a bottle. So what they did, they changed the bottle to a like shake weight system so that they can charge their telephone. Just by shaking the bottle. And this is Sigma Media, who designed interactive bench so that the bench knows where you are and actually talks to you. And there is a short video presentation.
The interactive bench is produced by Sigma Media, a local media company based in Vestmannaeyjar, Iceland. The development of the idea began as a project in Fab Academy. One of the results of the work of the group is the interactive bench that was made for a recently renovated square by the town's harbor.
Well, several people on the island work in the IT business, either locally or remotely for companies around Iceland. And we formed the group and held a few meetings in FabLab where we discussed ideas and exchanged knowledge. And a part of the group wanted to take it a step further and create something new and exciting. And we have worked on this project in FabLab it's just a great place to develop ideas into products.
The interactive bench is an innovative product and is meant to make the world a little bit more fun.
Komdu og spjallaðu við kallinn. Viltu ekki fá þér sæti hérna?
The unit has been developed as a general solution that can be implemented in various ways.
Stóra fjallið sem blasir við hér við höfnina stolt okkar eyjamanna. Það heitir Heimaklettur.
Well, the product senses the distance to the visitor, and in this version, the interactive bench asks the visitor to come a bit closer. If the visitor, however, doesn't react, then the bench keeps on calling and invites the person to come a bit closer to hear stories from the good old days or to learn about things in the environment, the buildings, the mountains, or the renovation of the square. And we can easily change the programming of the microcomputer in the product so that the interactive bench will behave differently. And for that matter, we can also produce a whole new set of audio files to develop a new version of this concept.
Láttu mig ekki trufla þig lengur.
Hey. Presenter view, thank you. Yeah. Okay, thank you. There is another video. Yeah, there is another video. It's hard to be my assistant. Thank you. This project that I will going to tell you about, it's a very nice project, and it could be exciting to do that in Belfast or here in Derry. And this is what we did. We renovated this square into, like, it was they were storing old boats and stuff like that, and a lot of rubbish there. And we got 1/4 of the community coming to participate in the project. We made a TV show about it, and everybody want to participate if there is a camera. And we used the FabLab to make stencils and make things for the square. And it was very exciting how we got all the community to work together. We did get the schools to participate to have some like celebration, the local theater, and we had like a big festive about it, and it was very much fun. And yes, thank you. It's a complicated presentation, and so it was very interesting because like the community decided how they wanted to have the square, and they designed it themselves. And in 2 days, the inhabitants came to that square and renovated it in like voluntarily. And this is an outdoor bench that was developed in the FabLab in Sauðárkrókur. What they have been doing there, they made the forms, the molds for this bench, so that now they can like produce it themselves. I lost the timing. No, I have a lot of things to tell you about. You're not allowed to leave people. No. So this is the places where we have the FabLabs. We started a project that we call Crystal, Creative Regions for Innovation, Skills, Technology, Accessibility and Learning, where the idea is to promote digital fabrication techniques to all these different parts of Iceland and to affect like the whole Iceland towards, so we will get highly skilled and competent workforce and flexible. Eddie, is that good enough pronunciation? Thank you. He's from Manchester. So what we are doing now, we want to reduce the unemployment rate from 7% to 3%, and we want to increase the people's technological literacy and capability provide new educational offers to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and elevate the status of VAT, vocational training. And here's a lot of material to read. But like, how are we going to do that? We want to develop new teaching methods to teach STEM, foster innovation and entrepreneurship competence, build a toolbox for learning and teaching. We know that we will not have a FabLab in each and every school, so we are creating a toolbox for teachers so that they can come to the FabLab and get the toolbox that they can bring to their own schools and keep on teaching digital fabrication. And so later on, they can come to the FabLabs and fabricate the things that they want. And what we are also doing is we are collecting the best methods for teaching those materials to one place, digital platform, and we are also like we have this network that we talk a platform where we are talking like every week and exchanging ideas. So the results of this is actually that the country, we believe that it will be more competitive. Yes, and it will be more competitive and ready to work on the challenges for the 21st century, because we know that we need new skills for new jobs, and the skills that we were training people 20 years ago that are maybe not the skills that are necessary for the next 20 years. And so we need to be ready for that. And these are two of the projects that I want to emphasize on. The Fab Academy that I encourage you to participate in. And there are some students from here who have been participating. And this is the collaborative project that we made in FabLab Iceland. We call it FabWiki, where people from all around the world are putting information how to do stuff. Like it's like a recipe, recipes for how to make things instead of like baking or something like that. It's how to make things. And so what we are doing in the FabLabs, we are stimulating curiosity and making things and getting new ideas into products. And in the end, how much time do I have left? As much. You should not say that. 5 minutes, okay? So this is Jens Divik. He went all around the world to explore different FabLabs around the world, and FabLabs and makerspaces, and he came with these rules how to achieve global collaboration with digital fabrication. Rule number 1 is to have fun, to finish your project, be prepared to accept the unexpected, be empathic. Yeah, okay, thank you. And also to document about your project, so you will be so other people can learn from what you are doing. And that is like very important, to document what you're doing and share it. Do you want to take a picture of it? No, it's not so remarkable. Okay. No. And like for international teamwork, I would encourage you to connect to the MCU and participate in Fab Academy, join the Fab Wiki, document your projects, and work on collaborative projects locally and globally, and also to participate in the annual conferences that will be held next in Boston. And remember, it's all about the people, and that we need to network locally and globally. And the more we put into the network, the more we will get out of it as well. And it's very important to have fun. And it's very important to have fun. And that's how we also share our passion about digital fabrication. If we are having fun, people will have fun in the FabLab, and so that is something that we need to think about a lot. So in the end, I want to tell you that the FabLabs have been helping to advance technological awareness, literacy, and capability, and seeds have been sown. Knowledge of digital fabrication technologies are gradually increasing, and we know it will lead to increased competitiveness of our nation. But thank you very much. You have been a great audience, and big applause for you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Frosty. I mean, this guy deserves a huge round of applause. I don't think any of us could go to Iceland and deliver a speech at a conference the way you delivered it in English to us. So thank you very much indeed, Frosty. Don't go away just yet. Before I ask you to do one last river dance for us, we can take a couple of questions from the floor. There's a man over here who's got his hand up. If we can get the microphone over to this man over here at this side, that would be great.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you. My name is Declan Hill. I'm one of the directors of the Forum for Alternative Belfast. We're a company who have benefited hugely from the FabLab in making a model. We've heard a lot of words about the agency of access, the agency of access to technology. We haven't heard the word materials being mentioned, and question the agency of access to materials. Wood, water, oil, polyplastics. Are we just creating a new hammer or a sickle? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like the FabLabs need to work more on like using local materials, and there is a lot of things happening in that way, in like using local materials, and next step of the FabLab is going towards like bio labs. For example, that you will grow your own ink for the ink printer that you're using. But like today, the FabLabs, we are buying materials like plywood and acrylics and stuff like that. And but there are a lot of things that we could do better in that way. And for example, we have had several interns coming to our lab, and there was a Japanese intern. He was walking over the island, and he could not understand. There was a lot of wool on the fences. We have like 600 sheep on the island where I live, and he saw it as a raw material, and he said, "Okay, why aren't you using this for the FabLab?" So we started collecting the wool and making felts that we laser cut and make some stuff out of. So my answer to that question, I do not have the actual answer, unless just we need to use our local materials better. So I don't have better answer than that. Yeah.
I think one more question for Frosty. We've got another question in the room. I think you've answered everybody's question.
Yeah. We had one prepared question from John. No, no. That was a very intelligent question that I have. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Frosty. We'll let you off with your river dance performance number 2 because you were so good the first time. Thank you very much indeed. Who doesn't want to go to Iceland now? Well, we've heard a lot about FabLabs. so far, but less about digital social innovation. So let's do something about that right now. Next, we have not one, but two speakers who have travelled from Nesta in London to give us an idea of what digital social innovation is all about and why it's important right around the world. Please put your hands together for Kathleen Stokes and Oliver Quinlan. First. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, how are you all doing today? Good, glad to hear it. Oh, have I just... This is a good start. So in case you were wondering, my name's Kathleen Stokes. This is Oliver Quinlan, and we're both here from Nesta in London.
Yeah, and we're here to talk to you about a whole variety of our work. We cover quite a few different aspects of some of the things that have been talked about already today, and part of Nesta's function is actually to try and map and understand some of the things that are going on in these areas. So we're going to have a look today. We'll tell you a little bit about Nesta so that you know where we're coming from, talk about this concept of digital social innovation and how it fits in with maker movements and some of the practical examples we've seen already. Look at making and DSI and how they fit together, and looking at where this is happening, and then finish up by having a look at what's going to come next in this kind of area from the work that we've been doing. So just quickly about Nesta. We are based in London, but our work focuses across the whole of the UK. We have a £340 million endowment to do work looking at bringing great ideas to life, so working on building and encouraging and growing innovations. And we do that in various different ways, by investing money, by carrying out research and trying to map and understand some of the phenomenon around innovation and how that's developing, running practical programs, supporting organizations, and developing people's innovation skills as well through the things that we learn. And we have a number of projects that link in with what we've seen already today and will continue to see, from our Make Things Do Stuff campaign, which tries to encourage young people to get involved in learning through digital making, through to the Digital Social Innovation Project, which is mapping different types of digital social innovation across Europe, and currently we've mapped around 900 organisations and explored some of the work that they're doing, and we'll talk to you at the end about how perhaps you might be able to contribute to that.
And it's also worth mentioning, I guess, FabLabs are something that have come up. In particular, Nesta helped to fund the creation of the first FabLab in the UK in Manchester. So we've had the pleasure of being, I think, connected to varying extents at varying times with this community. So it's always nice to come back and also talk with you guys. And so on to the second question, what exactly is digital social innovation? First of all, has anyone actually heard this term before? And if you have, can you raise your hand, please? Brilliant. Okay, great. So there's a few people that know what it is. Instead of me going on, I could ask you, but let me maybe give you a short form and a bit of a context about what this term is and why it's come about. I suppose the first thing we want to do is go back a few steps. It's pretty obvious that in the last while there's been a lot of, I think, pressing issues and challenges that our societies are facing, everything from budget constraints in government to a lot of challenging and wicked problems around chronic health, poverty, social exclusion. And while these continue to persist, we seem to be looking increasingly to find new ways of addressing these and delivering economic and social benefit. And one really important way that we can be thinking about this is innovation. Now, really simply, if we talk about innovation, this is about new ideas, methods, products, and services that can help us to improve something. Now, important to say is our aims are not always the same. So innovation in itself could be for the sake of technological advancement, it could be for economic growth, but when we talk about social innovation specifically, there's an understanding that this is about providing some sort of social benefit. And on top of that, it isn't just about creating new things all the time. Just as important in this process is finding things that work and then being able to share those and scale them up amongst wider communities. So keeping that in mind, I think we can dig a little bit deeper and think about technology, which has been an area in the last century. And obviously, if you think about technology, they say it's called technology because you don't know how to use it, and then finally you do, and you stop calling it technology. But innovation in technology has been something that's captured a lot of imagination in the last few decades. However, this hasn't always necessarily been for social benefit. So while many sectors have transformed thanks in particular to digital technologies, and even just looking at what we have around us today, I'm seeing a lot of phones out, we can ask ourselves, how is this actually improving our societies? And so this brings us to the concept of digital social innovation. Now, in its simplest definition, we can talk about this as using digital technologies to foster collaborations amongst people in order to then use these technologies to achieve some sort of social impact. A slightly longer version here, and I can tell you we have a full European report on our website, which has, I think, about a 2-page definition, but I won't go through that right now. But if that's the idea, it's about connecting people with digital technologies to do positive social things, but also using these technologies in order to achieve some sort of social impact, then I'd like to think, and I hope you would as well, that this is something that's pretty exciting. And for a variety of reasons, in fact. At Nesta, not only through our work in digital social innovation, but also through some of our earlier programs, we've seen there's a lot of different opportunities that come out of this configuration of technology, social innovation, and citizen engagement. Quite obviously, it empowers people. We can also talk about how it creates new opportunities for people to partner, be those citizens and public organizations or other stakeholders. It's also very interesting because it can show us how to increase the potential of new things and actually spread them much more quickly. And as you can see as well, this is also a way to connect configurations of people in different ways so that you don't have to be in the same room as them. You can also be collaborating at a distance or learning from one another much more quickly. Now, at present, and through our research, we've actually seen that there's probably about 6 key dimensions within the European digital social innovation community right now. And it's important to note that these things are not exclusive. In fact, quite often they're very connected, if not interdependent on one another. And also in future, these areas may change. But we're talking about some very key, I suppose, trends that are apparent across Europe right now, including in Northern Ireland. You've got open democracy. There's organizations as well that are looking to fund the acceleration and incubation of digital social innovation. We're also looking at open access and awareness networks that are coming into the fore in this space. And then in the last corner up here, movements around the collaborative economy, how we collaborate and share, whether that be goods, knowledge, finance, and production is a really interesting thing to consider. And that leads us, I think, to the most relevant aspect of this field, which is new ways of making. And I mean, it's obvious that within each of these, not only are they overlapping, but also each one of these is particularly diverse. So if we're talking about new ways of making and how this relates to digital social innovation, I think just to give you a bit of an example here, this can go everything from, has anyone heard of Zooniverse? No, great. Oh, wonderful. I love it when people don't know it. It gives me a sense to tell you something. Zooniverse is an interesting platform that has been created which allows people to contribute to open online citizen science projects. So you can donate your time to help contribute to academic research, looking at everything from analyzing the formation of galaxies to the study of cancer cells. And it's interesting because it's not only a platform that's been created for this purpose, but it's also connecting people and making use of their knowledge and experience in doing things that are currently not possible without technology alone. We're also seeing instances where people are looking to remake digital tools, as is the case with Fairphone. So in this instance, people are, it started from a campaign where people wanted to find out and encourage fairer conditions for the global electronics supply chain. And so in doing that, they redesigned a smartphone, and they've not only made it more environmentally friendly, but they've also guaranteed that there's basic standards for employees at every part throughout the supply chain. And then on top of that, they've made their process and their supply chain open online so that citizens, customers can go on and actually continue to check and ensure that they're upholding this promise. And just another one to mention is, I suppose, smart citizen kits. So this is actually a project that originated in FabLab Barcelona. I'm sure most of you there's quite a few people that have been there recently, I think in the last year, so this is probably old news, but quite quickly, these are sensor kits that anyone can create in order to collect local environmental data and then contribute that data into an open online data set, which is there so that people can start to analyze and research the impact of urban environments. And interestingly, these are already starting to be installed at scale in cities like Barcelona, quite obviously, and as well as Amsterdam and Manchester.
So data is a really important part of how some of this digital social innovation is developing, and one of the projects that we've been working on with the Open Data Institute has been a set of challenge prizes around use of open data. So there's a lot talked about in terms of how much open data is available, but where that really starts to make a difference is when people can make things based around that data. So we've run a number of challenges so far around education, opening up data sets about educational outcomes for parents and young people to be able to make decisions, and then we've challenged people to come up with ways of actually making things around that, and we've been looking at various different areas with that kind of methodology. So we think that there's a really strong link between digital social innovation and maker culture. They're not necessarily the same thing, but they certainly do overlap in a number of really important ways. First of all, they're all looking for positive outcomes, a vast array of different outcomes, but all outcomes with some kind of positive social innovation and social impact. There is a really strong theme of empowerment around this, as we've heard already, actually giving people access to tools to be able to make or to be able to have an impact within their communities, whether those are very small local communities or much broader, the global community. And through being empowered in this way, people start collaborating, and especially around spaces, as we'll see with some of our other examples, collaboration can become really key in this. And there are a variety of tools and technologies around this. Some examples of DSI are highly technological, some of them are much more low-tech, and I think many people in the area of making and DSI are quite fascinated by this interplay of high-tech and low-tech. They're also often resourceful, bottom-up and decentralized, people actually getting active and doing things. And there's a strong sense of local connection, but also how that fits with a global connection that we have with communications now as well. So making and DSI, as we said, share various different types of outcomes, and we're going to have a look now at just a few examples of things that are addressing different types of outcomes. Some of the main ones that we've come up with in the work that we've been doing are these 6 here, and some projects are actually crossing over several of these, which may be distinct but work together. So we have civic outcomes with people getting involved in the participation in society and in their own community. Social outcomes, things that are giving social benefits to various individuals and groups. The educational outcomes run through a lot of these, and we've heard a lot about learning already. Environmental impact is an important one as well, despite the fact that technology can sometimes be linked with damaging the environment. Actually, we're seeing a huge amount of moves towards more sustainable solutions through these kinds of things. Economic benefits, we've just heard in depth about the case study from Iceland of how there's been a huge impact there, but that's a key outcome for many of these projects, and also the personal outcomes, and I think that's where the fun really comes in, is how individuals are really getting some kind of benefit and purpose out of this. So we've got a few examples of some of these different outcomes now coming up, starting with the civic.
So in terms of making for civic action, there's a group of coders many years ago who came together and created something which is now called My Society. And the purpose of this was to invent and to popularize digital tools that could enable citizens to have more power and also to be able to have more democratic accountability at scale. So since they've created since they've been in existence, they've created and worked on a variety of platforms and apps, including things like Fix My Street, where if there's something wrong in your community, you can go straight through to this and make your complaint, and it'll go through to the right person in the right department, so it's synchronized, a much complex system. We've also seen things like they work for you, or what do they know, and what do you know is really interesting. It's helped to simplify the freedom of information request process, but also then has created a browsable archive of those requests that have been made along the way. So it's opening this space up, not just for people who want to be active, but also making it easier for others to learn from that process. As Oliver said, and I think as it's been quite apparent throughout the day today, a lot of interest in making and innovation also is connected to the idea of entrepreneurship. So using MacLab as an example, but not as the sole example, I think this applies to almost every FabLab that we've heard about today and those who aren't even in the room. What's really interesting about FabLabs and makerspaces is the fact that they give you access to digital prototyping tools, as well as a community and a network and expertise with others, which makes it a lot easier if you want to start your own project or turn that into a business. Not only can that help lower the costs in the earlier stages, but you also have a lot of help along the way, so you're more likely to go through and actually complete that in the end.
So the environmental benefits are the key focus of some of the projects that we've looked at, including this one, which is called Nature Bites, which we've been supporting through our Digital Makers Fund. And Nature Bites aim to engage young people with conservation and exploring issues around conservation and wildlife. And they do this not just by trying to educate them, but actually trying to make them active participants in developing this field. So their first project is building a camera station for capturing information about local wildlife. So young people get involved in actually making the tools that they need. This is based around a 3D printed case and a Raspberry Pi and various associated bits that all come together to make that happen. But then they also link the young people together through an online database. So the information they capture about their local environment is pooled together and actually comes together into a useful data set that can be used to map wildlife and explore issues of conservation. Looking again at young people, Kid A is a project which gets young children involved in learning through making. So they are involved in actually building their own toys, and the ethos of this project is really built around the idea that increasingly we hear people talking about some of the disadvantages of young people being engaged for a huge amount of time in screen time and in virtual worlds. This is an attempt to not diminish that interest that young people have in these engaging technologies, but link it to the real physical world so that they can get involved in face-to-face collaborations using that as a vehicle for it. So a social benefit in terms of diversifying young people's experiences.
And last example is around kind of social and personal benefit. Now, again, this applies to I think almost everything we've heard today, that the process of making and actually creating things that are of value to you and your community inherently help to build social relationships and also can give you a personal sense of well-being. And instead of going through the existing examples that we've heard, fantastic ones from Detroit, from Belfast and elsewhere, I thought it would be really interesting actually to strip back the technology just to prove how impactful making can be. And has anyone heard about the Men's Shed Association? Wonderful. I think it's quite popular over here, more so than actually in England, so it's nice to hear that. Since it's quite popular, and in fact, it's a space where older men can go, get together, have a cup of tea or coffee, and make whatever really is of interest. And what's been interesting about that is this model is so simple, and it's spread to over 1,000 across Australia. There's over 200 in Ireland, 80 in the UK, and many other countries that are trying this to actually do studies, and they've demonstrated that the personal mental well-being for the men who take part in this is actually quite significant because you're getting out there, you're meeting people. And I think this is a really simple example, but an important one for us to remember about. It's not just about the products, but it's also about the process and the experience, and also having the space to do this. Which brings us to, I guess, our next question. Where does all of this happen? So a lot of the examples of digital social innovation and making that we've just given there, I think it's quite implicit that a lot of this can happen anywhere. If you want to make something, there's nothing stopping you from doing it on your kitchen table apart from perhaps certain tools. You might have access to a workplace that is very well equipped, or you might know someone down the road that has some things you can borrow. But what's really important here today is thinking about places. I like this. There's a bit of mood music here. This is good. I think going back here, you can make things anywhere. You can make a digital social innovation anywhere, obviously in keeping with what resources you have available. But these communal spaces that we're thinking about here today, FabLabs and spaces for making in particular, seem to be particularly conducive to this kind of stuff. And I think in order to really appreciate that, it's important for us to take a second and think about what we consider a space. And I apologize immediately for my fantastic, and by fantastic, not fantastic, artwork here to try and illustrate the point I'm going to make to you here. This is about more than the space. This is not just about having a physical room. This is about what comes into it and what goes out of it. And it's all of the different types of impact we've talked about here, illustrated by a lovely red kind of splatter graphic, is the result of a process, as has been mentioned today. This is about people coming together, it's about sharing skills and building up your skills along the way, and it's about then having resources, whether that be materials, whether that be tools, and also being really honest about finance as well to ensure this is possible, coming in, having time and space to actually play around with these things. So as a result of that, you can start to create projects that are important to you, and also start to create new relationships with people in this space, but also out in your community. So in that respect, having an open space where communities can do this is incredibly valuable and can lead you to all sorts of impact that you might not have had on your own, or that you might not have conceived as an individual community member.
One such example of this is the Makerversity space in London, which is in the basement of Somerset House by the Thames, which we've had some involvement with these guys, and this is a great example of a space of people coming together because they need to access resources and bringing together various technology and resources, spaces for entrepreneurs to work, and they have a whole variety of different spaces, from real messy manufacturing spaces to desk spaces for people to work on the business side of what they do. And that has enabled lots of the individuals involved to reach really great outcomes. But in bringing them together in one space rather than them all on their individual kitchen tables, that has allowed other things to grow and develop. Undoubtedly, it's allowed skills to transfer between the people who are there, who are involved in the project. People have been able to learn new skills, and they've realized that this has become a real center of expertise, a community of knowledge and skills. And so now they're also developing alongside all of these social and economic projects. They're developing an education project to see how they can perhaps formalize slightly and really tap into the power that comes when that community of experts come together into one particular place. There are other spaces that are being more formally set up with that function in mind, such as FabLab Devon, which is currently setting up 2 FabLabs, one in the existing space of Exeter Library and another in a school. So spaces that are already set aside for education now being given the remit to get involved with making and building a network of people across quite a diverse and geographically spread rural area. So they're building that network and that capacity for people to build their skills and to achieve great things. Another organisation that we've been supporting has been taking this in kind of the opposite way, really. Black Country Atelier, based in the West Midlands in England, and they're aiming to give young people who probably wouldn't otherwise have any access to the maker movement and the kinds of technologies and resources that are available, to give them a first experience. But the way that they are approaching that is through other interests other than technology and making. And I think with a great many innovations, their growth starts off with people who are interested in the thing itself. So in this case, interested in digital technologies, fabrication technologies. These guys are taking these kinds of technologies to people who are interested in other areas initially. So they're running workshops for young people at the Clothes Show Live in just a few weeks. So that's the young people who are interested in clothes and fashion can realize the capabilities of all of these new technologies and this maker movement for actually having some kind of impact within that particular area.
So as Oliver has kind of mentioned, there's different ways these spaces can evolve, can apply their skills, and can, I suppose, specialize as well. And another way to think about this is also how these types of spaces fit within a wider network or ecosystem. And so, for instance, Hive Learning Network was started in the US, but there's over 10 cities around the world now that have formal networks or slightly less formal, but still very active communities. And these are groups of organizations that are dedicated to helping young people have opportunities to learn and make, and to do so are connecting up their experiences and their knowledge in order to make it much easier for someone to come in and find a pathway through everything. And makerspaces and FabLabs are some of the examples you would see in these spaces. So for instance, in New York City, the Hive Learning Network in New York has over 50 organizations that are actively working together around this common purpose, but they actually have everyone from the Smithsonian to Bronx Library that are coming in and actually taking part in that. So when we start to think about the different spaces that can help to support digital social innovation and making, I think it's important we take a moment here and say, okay, making and new tools are opening up. They're giving us new opportunities to have some sort of social benefit. Now, when that happens, we get some really great opportunities. And certainly, the impact is quite broad and diverse. In particular, FabLabs and makerspaces can be really encouraging and useful places for this to center itself around. And I think if we think about in Northern Ireland today, we've heard some really exciting stuff on behalf of government and on behalf of the network that are developing. It sounds like things are going really well here. Should we all just call it a day and say we're well done? I'm assuming everyone doesn't feel that's the case, because there's a lot more that we can do now that we're at such an interesting place. And so first, I'd like to kind of get towards the end here by thinking about some of the future opportunities for anyone who's interested in this space, whether you're running your own Fab Lab, whether you're wanting to become part of a makerspace, whether you are a researcher, as I am, and to think about how we can actually push this even further. And so a few of those things include clarifying and measuring impact. I think there's a lot that has been done in recent years to start to understand the different kinds of impact and effects of spaces and of digital social innovation, but we still have a long way to go. So people who are able to start to capture that information as they go and share that with one another will help us to separate the hype from the slightly more deeper experiences. Another thing to mention is experimenting with new models. And what I mean by that is, in effect, I think we can talk about different kinds of making and different kinds of programs that can be on offer. And when you go to different Fab Labs or makerspaces, you do see different specialisms. And so trying out new things that might respond to your community's demands is really important, and also learning from others as well in that instance. As mentioned in my last slide, I think linking up to different organizations and institutions is incredibly powerful. So the fact that governments are getting excited about this is really exciting. But equally, other local community groups or perhaps employers in the area who might have resources and skills to offer, when those things come together, you start to get a bit more of a, I think, a stronger ecosystem around making and digital social innovation. And lastly, and I think your presentation around Belfast was really interesting. How do you open this up to new communities and to get more people on board? And is that as simple as, you know, showing someone how to repair something so that then they understand the value of this space? Finding different ways of opening this up is hugely important for us as we go forward. Another thing to say is connecting with other types of innovation models and spaces. So, as Oliver pointed out in Makerversity, it's not just a space where you can make. There's also space available for people who are starting a business, perhaps. There's also some informal social space if you want to just go down and hear someone talk about an event they're doing. Combining these spaces with other areas is really interesting. So libraries, as someone mentioned earlier today as well, these are getting kind of combined to find new configurations.
It feels like we're really at the beginning of something here that could potentially be really big, but as this whole area continues to develop, I think we have to keep thinking about how the purpose and how the message of it evolves so that we can realize the potential of getting all the different groups involved. And one of those could potentially be moving beyond making as an interest in itself, which is where a lot of the innovation has started, and many people in this room, I think, have probably come into this because of an interest in making or an interest in technology, and moving towards looking at the making as being a method for achieving other things, so that we can make sure that the full potential of this can be realized, and so that people such as those young people we saw earlier, whose perhaps main interest is in fashion, can see that this technology is a means for them to be able to realize kind of involvement in that whole field through using making as that particular method. So looking at what we're doing going forward, and I've just started work on a piece of research looking at the state of the nation in terms of digital making for young people in the UK. We know that there are huge amounts of fantastic opportunities opening up to young people. There are lots of people doing really, really great work, but we want to try and map across the whole of the UK and see where that's happening. There are real centres of innovation in places like Derry and Belfast, and also in London and lots of other areas as well. But how does that spread across the whole of the UK? How do we open this up to young people, and where are the gaps for innovators to come in and start doing new things?
And taking a step back from education specifically, a lot of our work is going to be continuing to look at making and social innovation using digital technology. So if those of you have come across things like Airbnb, Zipcar, Uber, the sharing or collaborative economy, as we're calling it, this is an area Nest is looking into quite a bit more. So thinking about how we can make new types of technology in order to support collaboration, including collaborative production and making. Also, building on our digital social innovation work, the European project we've been leading will be coming to an end in the early next year. So we're starting to think about how we can build off of that, looking at things such as smart cities, but also I think thinking about how that connects to people and social action as well. Finally, we're also starting to do a little bit of work to figure out what the broader landscape is, because I think a lot of people who are immersed in these spaces know what's going on implicitly, but making that apparent to a wider community and also collecting a little bit more data on this is really useful for not only the communities and the spaces themselves, but also for people who are interested in this, such as researchers or policymakers. So we're hoping in the next little while to start doing a bit of a mapping exercise about makerspaces, FabLabs, hack spaces in the UK, and turning that into a valuable open data set that can be really useful for everyone out there. And this will be done in an open process. So keep checking our blogs and you'll be sure to hear a bit or come and chat with us afterwards.
So just to finish off, we're going to go back to the beginning really, and where all of this started with Professor Neil Gershenfeld. And this quote, which I think has inspired a great many people, about giving people the right tools and they will be able to achieve extraordinary things. Now, what we think is really interesting is not just giving people the tools, which is hugely important, but what happens when you bring those tools together and bring the people with interests together into a particular space. And that opens up a whole other level of potential innovations and also learning as well. So we think that it's really important to think not just about that person to resources and tools relationship, but the relationship between all of the different people who are involved and can come into this space, because that's where the next kind of innovation is potentially going to come from.
And so you'll be happy to hear that's the end of our presentation. But before I let you go, if you're interested at all in digital social innovation and learning more, I really encourage you have a look at digitalsocial.eu, which is our projects page. And we've actually had the fortune of being able to create an interactive map where over 900 projects and organizations and initiatives around digital social innovation have been placed, crowdsourced in fact. So if you're involved in this and you haven't put your stuff up, please do. And we're not only collecting to see what different kinds of things are out there, but we're also trying to understand the relationships between everyone out there as well. So on that note, please have a look at that. If you're interested in having a chat, we're here, or tweet us, and we're really looking forward to hearing more about the work that's going on this afternoon, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to Kathleen and Oliver. Fascinating talk, and as you both say, you're available for chats over lunchtime as well, and tweeting and all the rest of it. So thank you very much indeed. So you guess now that you can really see the whole international context that this work sits in, but we couldn't come to Derry, of course, without hearing about some of the work that has been done right here. I'm delighted to say John Pito from the Nerve Centre's Fab Lab is with us. He's going to talk us through the educational initiatives that have been developed and delivered right here in Northern Ireland. John Peto, everybody.
Great. Well, as always, we're horrendously behind schedule at this stage, so the benefits of hosting an event mean that you're the expendable one at the end. So I'm really going to boil it down to a couple of key messages. I'm not going to delay anybody any longer and talk about some of the work we've been doing with digital fabrication in education here. We've got a pretty good news story in Northern Ireland around what we've been doing in schools with this, and we're proud of it. And I'd just like to give you a couple of messages to take home about what it is that we've done. Really, we had a head start in this. Our FabLab came to us in 2012, or opened in 2012, but it opened in the educational space on a 10-year foundation of creative learning centres, which have been established by Northern Ireland's Green and Decal, and have been working around delivering creative learning interventions in the primary and post-primary curriculum, working with teachers and working with students to show them how creativity can unlock learning at all levels of ability and across all areas of the curriculum. So we had a really strong, robust model to build FabLabs onto. The other thing that we had as a kind of a key advantage, a bit of distinct competitive advantage, was this notion, digital making, as we've heard from Kathleen and Oliver, and our other talkers this morning, is an idea whose time has come. It's very, very current. We hear a lot about it. We read a lot about it. When we came across FabLab, we thought, well, actually, digital making is what we've always done here through the Creative Learning Centres, but instead of making actual physical products, we've been inspiring people through making virtual products, films, music, digital stories, and the FabLab grafted straight onto that model and sort of played to our key strengths. So we were pushing an open door, and we had a distinct kind of advantage around how we could make an offer to schools and how we could try and embed making into schools across Northern Ireland here. We got the concept when it came to us. One of the other key things that we've had through that 10 years of experience, we spent years in our early days going out and replacing teachers in classes, delivering content using digital technology because the teachers didn't know how to use it, maybe didn't want to know how to use it, were a bit scared by it, but could see it engage students. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've developed enough capacity and enough respect for the work that we've done to be able to move beyond that and say, actually, we want to train teachers because there's no future for anybody in replacing teachers and coming in as a paid hand. So we've got a model where we train teachers, upskill teachers, and inspire teachers around technology, which again, because of the confidence, the goodwill that we've developed over a decade of work, we were able to plug straight in with schools. We teach, or we train through the Creative Learning Centre around 5,000 teachers a year here. So we had a big, robust machine that Fab could fit into. But that's not to say that FabLab was just something that came and was absorbed into what we've been doing. I wouldn't state it as far as a revolution, but FabLab has led to a radical evolution in the work of the Creative Learning Centres and our schools' work. We've been working for a decade around film and digital media with very, very positive results, very strong success. We've revolutionized the curriculum in Northern Ireland and changed the way that learning takes place here in a way that hasn't happened in the rest of the UK or Ireland. But FabLab brought new dimensions, new technologies to that, again moving from that virtual making into the physical, hands-on making space. And we knew from our experience with technology through film and music that it was around building confidence in teachers to engage with that new technology. Once you could take some of those fear factors away, remove those barriers, then you can just let the teachers get on with teaching and doing what they're brilliant at. They just need that confidence to be built. So FabLab gave us a whole new sphere of operation, a whole new panoply of possibilities around what it was that we could do. The new technology presented serious challenges to us in how we could start to accommodate this, because key to what we've been doing in education and what we always do in education is around purpose. We're not just around bringing new toys, new technologies, new tools into schools to engage students, but to no real end. Anything we try and do in a school is around making a teacher's life easier and making delivery of learning and delivery of the curriculum, delivery of learning outcomes easier, better, and stronger. So it's around purposing that technology and how we could do that with this new technology that we were struggling to understand ourselves. None of us had seen a 3D printer until we got the FabLab project. None of us knew what laser cutting really was or how that could work in a classroom. So it presented a huge challenge to us, but also a huge opportunity. Our work through digital film, digital media, and music had often been seen as sort of erring towards the arts end of the curriculum, the humanities end of the curriculum. Bringing in this new kind of learning enabled us to develop a model around STEAM-based education, where we could take our traditional strengths in arts, media, creativity, and then start to fuse that into the STEM subjects that FabLab was bringing to us, that digital fabrication was bringing to us. We worked hard to exploit every benefit from FabLab, not just the technology benefits, but we had MIT as a partner who was very interested in what we were doing. We knew that was a great opportunity, so we worked with them. They led us into Rhode Island School of Design, who had been championing the STEM to STEAM movement across the United States, and we took a lot of learning from them. We brought Rhode Island School of Design here to this room earlier on this year. I'm sure some of you were here to hear them, to talk about STEAM-based learning and how that could impact across the curriculum. We took the learning from that and started to develop a plan for STEAM-based learning in Northern Ireland with FabLab as the driver behind it, working as the kind of engine behind it. So our experience in digital media previously had shown us that, yes, you can inspire people with technology, they can understand it, they can get it, they can enjoy it, but that purpose has to be there, and that purpose has to be supported with skills and resources. So through the support of DECAL, and thanks very much earlier on, Joanna as well, through the continued and ongoing, very gratefully received support of DECAL, we were able to employ in FabLab Belfast and in FabLab Nerve Centre the first STEAM officers in the UK, people who were directly mandated, employed to train teachers and train young people in how STEAM-based educational initiatives can work, to show them the hook of arts and creativity to use technology across the curriculum. So we provide structured training for teachers in how to do that across the curricular key stages. And we're working on developing resources, working with SEER and other partners on developing resources to ensure that once that training has been taken place, teachers aren't left unsupported in the classroom. They've got the resource base to fall back on to be able to deliver learning around that. And really, our vision, if we would have anything as grand as a vision for this, has been, when we saw FabLab, straight away it was around, this is not a tool that can just be used for design and technology. It's a cross-curricular tool. Every teacher in the school should be inspired and empowered to look at how digital fabrication, new ways of making, creating, getting hands-on, collaborating, and constructive can teach the curriculum area that they're responsible for. It's not just around the teachers who we would expect to have this, any more than you would expect an ICT department to be the only people using a computer in a school. We don't expect a TD department to be the only people using a 3D printer or a laser cutter in the school. And that's been the position we've taken with schools, and they've adopted it and embraced it to large part. What this has looked like in practice, again, it's a very short video, 90 seconds, just to give you an idea of what a kind of FabLab intervention might look like in a classroom. This is a project from a school here in Derry that was delivered earlier on this year. I'll let the film play and speak for itself, and then talk briefly about it afterwards.
It all stemmed from a visit down to the Nerve Centre, and the boys in class sort of thought it would be a good idea to do a jigsaw of the plantation of Derry.
We were studying the plantation on the board, and we thought we might as well get a hands-on experience.
We used some programs on the computer. We traced out the actual shape from a piece of paper, and then we used this machine, and it just started cutting out all the pieces.
This machine here now is what we're going to use. Jigsaw shapes out. FabLabs have been set up to give community access to the type of machines that would already be available in industry, things like laser cutters, 3D printers, CNC routers.
It gives them the opportunity to experience a work-based environment from the phase of planning and preparation, to have that engagement with the teacher in the classroom and the excitement of being able to take this and take it to a different level, and to have a finished product at the end of it.
It is ICT, and it is available right across the curriculum. You can fashion a project for any subject and actually come and utilise these tools to make it. In terms of mixed ability groups, or any ability groups, they can come and achieve very creative and expressive outputs, whilst also learning quite extensive IT and ICT.
I think a lot of subjects now, they'll link up. This is about a geography too, at the same time. I think it's really good, I think it's amazing. One time now, computers are going to do everything for us.
So what we want to try and do is mainstream making, bring making right into the heart of the curriculum across schools provision, so that it's not just sitting out there. You saw there in that project, you've got a history teacher leading the project, but he's actually teaching the maths curriculum through the 3D design and the planning of the models, the scaling of the models. There's apps. how maps are created and the landscape that's being portrayed in there. You've got the visual design and the kind of product development usability around trying to create something that's not going to hurt anybody, that's going to be functional and practical when it's finished. And as Damien, the school principal, says there, you've got the workplace skills that are being delivered through that project as well. These are real tools that are used in real workplaces. So through a history project, you start to grow out across the curriculum and encapsulate a much wider area of learning with much wider areas of benefit. But, you know, as I'd said, we're around working in practical ways with teachers in schools. That project involved students coming into the FabLab. That's obviously not practical. But projects around 3D printing are extremely practical. A 3D printer now costs £1,000 if you want to buy one. About the same as a decent Mac desktop computer, so not beyond reach of many schools. Many schools have bought them already. Many schools that have come and worked with us have now bought them. But in order to try and facilitate that process further, we're also working with schools on building their own 3D printers. One of the initiatives that comes out of MIT is machines that make machines. So we're sitting down working with a teacher and students on how they can create their own 3D printer, understand how it's built, fix it, repair it, replicate it as many times as they wish to, and develop this kind of capacity within schools. And the ability to 3D print, well, so what, you know, but if you're 3D printing historic artifacts or buildings, then you've got an engagement hook to get people learning about history. The Smithsonian in America has put thousands of 3D plans online, freely available online to download the sort of historical artifacts of the USA. No reason why that can't happen here. Obviously in kind of science, in engineering there are 3D printing potentials, yes, but also in biology, 3D printing body parts, dissection models. There's a whole panoply of options and a wealth of options that you can inspire and upskill teachers to do relatively simple through one particular piece of equipment. There are many pieces of equipment that can do similar work in schools. Beyond schools, we found an incredible potential FabLabs in working in needs-based learning. A couple of pilot projects that we've seen retention rates of over 90% and 100% in one case over an extended period of a needs-based course, which is incredibly impressive and exceptional for needs-based learners, trying to inspire and engage the hardest to inspire and engage learners that we have in Northern Ireland. The FabLab has been an incredibly powerful tool for doing that, in moving beyond schools and beyond into wider communities. Around the impact of this, we're in assessment mode at the moment. We're inspected by the ETI. Some of the FabLab work was covered under a recent inspection, which achieved a very good status. We're gathering data and working with Oliver, Kathleen, Nestor, and others around how we measure the impact of this work, what the true benefit, what the true value, and what the true worth of it is. But the future, as far as we're concerned, for this work is we feel we're almost at the same point we were 10 years ago with digital media and creative media filmmaking-wise. There's a lot of potential and a lot of uptake around educationists wanting to use digital making for their lower achieving students as an engagement tool to get them in and learning. And yes, we've shown it's phenomenally powerful at engagement at those levels. But actually one of our key battles and one of our key victories with filmmaking and wider media generally was proving to the education system that this also helps your higher achieving students achieve better and achieve more. I think the future thrust of our work will be trying to embed digital making across the curriculum at all levels to ensure that all of our learners get the maximum benefits of it, and that we can see how we can grow this and take advantage of the fact that we do have a bit of a head start in Northern Ireland and try and keep ahead of the pack. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Well, thanks very much indeed, John, and continued success to you here in the Nerve Centre in Derry as well. Thanks indeed to all our speakers this morning, to Frosty, to Blair, to Adam, to Kathleen, to Oliver, and finally to John there. Thanks so much indeed. It's been a fascinating morning. I'm sure you will all agree. Just before we break for lunch, I'm going to outline what's going to happen this afternoon. Lunch will last until about 2:15, and at that stage there will be 3 workshops held in the main hall just right here. You can read the descriptions of those workshops in your delegate packs on your tables, and sign up for them in the foyer if you haven't already done so. The workshops will be interactive and informal, so go along, do get involved. Then at 2:45, there will be 2 panels running downstairs to discuss some of the issues raised here this morning, and they will be run in the Whittaker Suite. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people to direct you to the Whittaker Suite in case you get lost. Again, they're informal, but space might be limited, so go sign up and make sure you're there on time, please. That would be great. And then at 3:15 the event will officially close, but there is an open meeting at 3:30 in the green room for anyone who runs a lab or who may be interested in opening a Fab Lab in Ireland, so make your way along to that if you want to. Also, very importantly, who took part in the puzzle competition? Put your hands up. Which tables took part? I know you did, yes. Oh, good. Plenty of people involved. Delighted to say the winners are the W5 education table. Where are you? Well done. Your prize is the knowledge that you beat everybody else, so well done indeed. It's now time to eat. I'm sure you're all ready for a bite, to begin to digest what you've been hearing and thinking about this morning. Certainly plenty of food for thought, I'm sure you'll agree. Thank you for having me here today. Thanks to the Nerve Centre for inviting me back to Derry. It's been an absolutely fascinating morning. I hope to see you again soon. Enjoy this afternoon. Good luck and safe home. I'll see you soon. Thank you very much indeed.